Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Married to Kuroka and Rossweisse movie. Before we start, please go support TomiDarkSouls for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. A teacher with a boring life full of regrets, a nurse who struggles day after day to support her large family, a young man who has suffered terrible misfortunes throughout his life due to his condition. Beautiful melodies will be the forgers of the new path that these three people will walk. The only thing left is the love that these three will develop throughout this new love story. Chapter 1: A Unique Boy. POV? I really don't know where to start. Well, I really don't even know how it happened. Don't confuse me. It's not that I regret it, it's just that it was too sudden. One moment I'm teaching as usual. Then suddenly that boy calls me the same way he always does, always revealing a scar or two, and then I'm naked next to him, while I caress his chest, and he hugs me affectionately. I can't help it. I've met a lot of men in my life, one worse than the last. Maybe I'm just letting myself be fooled by his genuine kindness, by his incomparable goodness, by his sincere love that is only directed at me. Or maybe it doesn't even have to do with that. Maybe just the way she plays the violin so melodiously and beautifully was enough to captivate me. I don't know. I really don't want to think about it either. Maybe I just want to thank him for making my monotonous and gray life turn into a fun and colorful one. I hope you pay attention and enjoy what I am going to tell you about how this unfortunate woman, whom everyone addresses as Sensei, found someone to whom she can say, "I love you." And POV? Sometimes words are not even needed. Sometimes a simple hug is more than enough. Other times it can be a simple kiss, and here, all that was enough was a simple melody. 7 a.m. The cold streets of Ko slowly begin to be inhabited by the people who live there, some getting ready to go to classes, others ready for a hard day of work, others simply because they don't want to be at home, and she, the one who in a boring way goes to teach classes at the prestigious Ko University. Silver hair that reaches her lower back, blue eyes that look at her current life in a monotonous way, and obviously those incredible proportions that adorn her voluptuous body. She slowly made her way through the huge crowd of people on the train. Unfortunately for her, this day she had to start in a very bad way, just like always. There was a guy behind her playing with his cell phone, but it was just a facade. What the guy really wanted was to get closer and be able to touch her round and shapely ass, and unfortunately for him, the silver-haired girl was more than aware of that. The guy slowly stretched out his hand in search of contact, and when he was seconds away from doing so, the silver-haired girl did something totally unexpected for him. "Kaya, a pervert," he shouted in a scandalous manner, causing everyone to look in his direction. The guy was alarmed but remained calm because even though he had that intention, he hadn't really done anything. How unfortunate that the silver screen girl was much more intelligent. The guy suddenly felt someone grab him by the shoulder, revealing a bunch of people looking at him in a bad way. What's going on?" the guy asked, now more nervous than before because of what he was about to experience. "What the hell do you think you're doing with that young lady?" asked a guy much bigger and stronger than him. "I didn't do anything," did the guy was going to say when he turned to see the silver-haired girl who, to his surprise, was crying. "Why are you doing this to me?" said the silver-haired girl with tears falling down her eyes. "I just want to go to work." Suddenly and without warning, most of the people on the train pounced on the guy who understood their unfortunate situation. There was no way they would believe him over the tearful maiden. Once they arrived at the station, the silver-haired girl bowed in gratitude for everything the people did, making some blush because of the tender smile the girl gave them. The girl headed for the stairs to get out of there, and once outside and without anyone being able to see her, the girl wiped away some traces of tears and put her monotonous look back on. "Damn pervert, damn day," said the silver-haired girl, complaining and cursing a lot of things. "Damn life." The girl continued her course to the university. Once near the grounds, she began to receive greetings from both male and female students. One or the other would make a flirtatious comment in search of winning points with the silver screen, not knowing that all they were doing was boring her and stressing her out more and more. As long as a compliment is well said and without disrespecting the person, it's fine, right? That wasn't the case with the silver-haired girl. It's true that the compliments she received were nice, sometimes tender, but due to her luck and the life she has led, The only thing she has received in her life are perverted comments in the direction of her very developed chest and her firm and well-formed rear. Leaving that aside, the girl continued on her way where she would experience what for her is her daily bread at university. Ross-chan exclaimed a white flash which sought to fall on the one now known as Ross, who by the way stepped aside, letting whatever tried to grab her pass by. Ouch. Please, I ask you to stop joking, Odin-sensei, said Ross to the now recognized as Odin, who had a red nose due to the blow he received when he fell. Cold as always, right? At this rate you'll never get a boyfriend, Kakaka, said the white-haired old man, who was wearing a beach shirt, shorts and sandals, and laughed outrageously. Whatever you say, Ross answered in a bored manner as he headed to his workstation. Once he sat down, he felt another presence which, without knowing why, bothered him. Good morning, Wise-sensei said to a guy who must be the same age as her, blonde, with a somewhat seductive but serious look, blue eyes and glasses on them. Arthur-sensei, good morning, the silver-haired girl responded, giving a friendly smile which made the blonde blush a little. Flirting so early, Naya was heard behind Ross and Arthur, as the blonde finished blushing to turn around quickly. Kuroka-sensei, exclaimed the blonde, looking angrily at the one now known as Kuroka. Cat smile, golden eyes, black hair that reaches her legs, and a body that would make even the most self-controlled man look ridiculous. Meet the college nurse. Very funny, Kuroka answered the silver-haired girl, and then gave the black-haired girl a slap on the head and stopped, saying, Naya, it's not like you're a cat. Naya jajajaja. As bitter as ever, Ross answered the brunette, while caressing the place where she was hit. Ross could only let out a tired sigh. She planned to continue with her things but was stopped by Arthur's hand, who was a little blushing but still had a serious look. Is something wrong? The silver-haired girl asked, causing the blonde to tense up a little. Well, Wise-sensei, if you don't mind, the blonde tried to say until he finally received a boost of confidence under the amused gaze of Odin and Kuroka. Would you like to go? Alright teachers, classes are about to start, and I want everything in order, said a tall man with green hair combed back and a serious look. And you are still so strict, Ajuka-sensei, Odin said a little quietly but not enough. Oh, do you have something to say, dirty old man? Ajuka asked with a vein prominent on his temple. The only thing green here is that ugly hair of yours, exclaimed the old man, angry at being called that. Both senseis started an argument under the amused gaze of Kuroka, the serious and bored gaze of Ross, and the embarrassed gaze of Arthur for what he was about to say. This is really stupid, said the silver-haired girl while taking her things. I'm going to class. Ross-sensei, if I'm not mistaken you are in the Faculty of Art and Music, right? Ajuka asked while pulling Odin's face and receiving a nod from Ross. Today you will receive a new student, and well. MH? Was the noise Ross made at how calm Ajuka was being. Treat him well, said the green-haired man as he summarized his battle with the white-haired old man. Ross was surprised by the green-haired boy's comment but preferred to ignore it and summarizes his way to class. Again she began to receive one or another comment to which she responded with a false smile. She did not understand it. At the university there are 100 girls prettier, sexier and younger than her. Well, it is not that she is an old woman, she is only 24 years old, but she still did not understand it. Once she arrived at her class she saw that there were some students talking who welcomed her by waving their hands from their seats, to which she responded in the same way. Taking advantage of the fact that no one had arrived yet, he began to think a little about the decisions he had made throughout his life to get to where he is now. Since she was very little, she was very independent. She never needed much help for the things she wanted to do. That is also because she was not raised by her parents, but by her grandmother. She was always intelligent and diligent, a hard-working girl who was happy with life, knowing that she would achieve many of her goals if she followed this path until she came across that thing called love. When she was still studying at university she became friends with a boy, an exchange student from Greece, with a manly yet flirtatious look, a good physical build and very polite, something that attracted Ross almost instantly. It wasn't long before Ross decided to confess his love to her. The guy was surprised at first, but after thinking about it for a few seconds he accepted, filling the beautiful silver-haired girl's heart. The truth is that this relationship did not last long, a couple of months in fact. There came a time in the relationship when the guy started to be too insistent about sleeping with her, and that made me miss her. The guy was always trying to kiss her or touch her in inappropriate places, although Ross never allowed it. In fact, the furthest she let him go was a few affectionate hugs, 0 kisses, 0 groping, 0 hex. In the end, the guy showed his true colors. It was a bet he had made with the Japanese friends he met how long it would take him to get her into bed. Neither stupid nor lazy, Ross gave him a fierce punch while crying bitterly. Her first boyfriend, her first failure. After that, different guys started confessing their love to her over the years, and it's not like she didn't accept, it's just that once the guys showed their true intentions, she couldn't do anything but get angry and break up with them. Bad relationships slowly took away the brilliance she once felt so proud of and locked her in a colorless cage. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't even notice when the classroom was already full, with all the students chatting or doing things on their cell phones. Ross thought it was time to start classes. He got up from his seat, and before he could say anything he saw someone signaling to him from the door. It was Ajuka. Ross quickly walked over to see what his co-worker wanted. "Is something wrong?" the silver-haired girl asked, since it was very unusual for Ajuka to go to someone else's class considering that she is in another faculty. "Ross-sensei, do you remember the boy I told you about?" said the green-haired boy, receiving a nod from the silver-haired girl. "Well, here he is." The silver-haired girl looked around and didn't see anyone. Ajuka let out a sigh and took a step to now reveal the student. He was a brown-haired boy, somewhat short to look like a college student, with brown eyes and a curious look. Ross felt a little upset when he saw the boy. He looked more like a child than a young college student, but what can you do? If the director says it's okay, it's okay. "Hello, my name is Rossweisse. I will be your sensei from now on," the girl introduced herself, stretching out her hand to shake it with the brown-haired boy. Both Ajuka and Ross were surprised to see that the brunette was not paying any attention to them. In fact, he approached the living room door and began to knock on it with his fingertips, creating a nice melody. "Hey, don't be," the silver-haired girl was going to say angrily at how disrespectful this boy was being, but she was stopped by Ajuka. "Ross-sensei, I know it's a bit difficult, but please, I ask you to be patient. This boy is quite special," said the green-haired boy, at first nervously but then putting on a more serious attitude. Ross didn't know what to say. Who is this guy supposed to be? To her, he's nothing more than a disrespectful fool, but apparently he's more important than she thought. "Okay," said the silver-haired girl, somewhat resigned. "Very well. Let's go in so you can introduce yourself to your new classmates." This time the brown-haired boy did pay attention. He looked at the silver-haired girl, who looked back at him, and the brown-haired boy gave her a radiant smile which made Ross's heart skip a beat. Once inside, Ross couldn't help but wonder what the hell was that smile. He had never seen one like it, one so sincere and full of life. "Alright guys, we have someone new in the group. I hope you welcome him in the best way possible," said the silver-haired girl, recomposed, giving the brown-haired boy a black marker. "Introduce yourself." The boy stood there for a few seconds looking, and then took the marker, approached the blackboard and began to write his name. Everyone was watching, and it seemed strange to them since the brown-haired boy seemed not to know how to write. Only one of the students understood why. Everyone's gaze narrowed as no one understood what the brown-haired boy had written on the blackboard. He even managed to make Ross a little angry. "Are you making fun of me?" asked the silver-haired girl with a terrifying aura which scared the brown-haired boy, who waved his hands in denial. "Speak up now, are you retarded?" shouted a blond boy with green eyes. "A little tired, we should be taking classes now." The brown-haired boy first looked at him in surprise and then put on a somewhat sad expression. He approached Ross and snatched a pencil from his pocket, surprising her in the act. He took out a small notebook from his back pocket and began to write something more comfortable now. All the students were already a bit stressed by the scene, although it also took a few minutes out of class, so it wasn't so bad. Once the brown-haired boy finished writing, he tore off the sheet of paper and gave it to Ross under everyone's watchful eyes. Ross received it, and when he read what was written, he couldn't help but let out a gasp as he brought one of his hands to his mouth that hadn't crossed his mind. Ross slowly raised his gaze to meet a sad smile from Issei. He felt extremely bad for how he spoke to him before. He approached his desk to face his students and read out loud what he said. "And my name is Issei Hyodo," said the silver-haired girl, stuttering a little and stopping to say the next sentence, which she was sure would impact more than one, "and I'm mute." The moment he said that phrase, the entire classroom let out a gasp and looked in surprise at the man now known as Issei, who, as if he didn't care about anything, was looking out the window, admiring how beautiful the university grounds were. The boy who had previously encouraged him to speak felt horrible about himself. He didn't have a very good morning, so he blurted out that phrase because of the troublesome boy who had arrived. He was going to apologize, but Ross interrupted him since there was something else written. To the boy who approached me, I'm sorry for delaying class, but I can't talk. Now it was official. The guy felt like the worst human being in the world. No one knew what to say. Not only was it difficult to speak, he was the one who apologized when it should have been the other way around. Complicated, embarrassed, guilty, and other looks were what Issei received, who wasn't even paying attention. Well, I am sorry about what happened before, said the silver-haired girl, not knowing how to approach the subject. Thank goodness someone would intervene to help everyone. Don't even try it, sensei. He won't pay attention to you, said to a black-haired boy who stood up with an amused look on his face. Chao-kun? The silver-haired girl asked, surprised, since the man now known as Chao doesn't usually pay attention in class despite being a genius when he comes to play the piano. Hearing that name, the brown-haired boy finally reacted. He turned around to face the black-haired man who gave him a friendly smile which Issei returned. It's been a while, Issei, said the boy approaching Issei and ruffling his hair a little. I see you're still the same as always. No one understood what was happening. Where would the popular Chao know the strange Issei? Everyone was surprised when Chao approached one of the many lockers in the classroom and took out an instrument that, incredibly, had never been used in that class, a violin. Issei's eyes lit up when he saw the instrument. He was about to snatch it from his hands, but the black-haired boy stepped aside, shook his head, causing a tender pout on Issei's face which brought out a few blushes from the girls in the class. First we have to ask permission, Issei, said the black-haired boy before looking at Ross-sensei. If it's not too much trouble, Issei could do the initiation to classes, right? Eh? Ah, yes, of course, said the silver-haired girl, slowly recovering. Issei, I'll explain to you what initiation is. No need, Chao said, giving Ross an amused smile. He doesn't need to know what to do, he just needs to know when. This time, Chao passed the instrument to the excited chestnut, who quickly positioned himself to play. Everyone now paid close attention. They know that to get into Ko University you have to be very smart, and as for the Faculty of Art and Music you have to be practically a genius at whatever you do, so everyone wanted to find out what this boy could do with that instrument that no one had ever played. Ross more than anyone wanted to listen. She felt that whatever Issei was going to do at this moment could give a unique change to her life, and she was not wrong. It was a Chopin melody brought to the violin. Once Issei began to play, everyone was immersed in the melody. It was like being in a museum which showed images of all the good things that have happened in the lives of each student and Ross, making them feel a unique warmth within their being. Chao was the only one who, despite being immersed, continued to look at Issei. A nostalgic smile formed on his lips. He knows better than anyone what Issei's life has been like and how much it has cost him to survive in this world where the strongest eats the weakest. And that's precisely why he doesn't understand how a boy who's had so many hard times living can see everything in color when everyone else only sees it in black and white. He's spent years of his life trying to figure that out, and the only moment he manages to understand a sliver of what Issei sees is when he hears him play. Ross the girl couldn't believe it. What was all this? It was as if Issei dug into the depths of her memory and brought out the best of her life. She couldn't help but smile as she thought about the wonderful things she had experienced. Like Chao, she looked in Issei's direction to see what wonderful expression the brown-haired boy would have while playing such a beautiful melody, and what she saw left her speechless. He was crying sadly. Ross didn't understand it. The melody managed to give his monotonous day some beautiful colors, so why? Why were the colors surrounding Issei black and white? He didn't understand it. It was simply ridiculous. It was as if the boy managed to illuminate everyone's lives at the cost of his own life. In an unconscious impulse he wanted to get closer, but at the same time he felt that he had to let him finish. Everyone was still immersed in the melody. Chao was enjoying the wonders the boy was doing with the music, and Ross who was trying to understand what was happening with this boy. When it ended it was like a hard blow of reality. Everyone came back to themselves a bit bewildered by the abruptness of the ending. They turned their gaze to Issei to find a small surprise. The boy had his eyes closed with tears falling down his face with a radiant smile, and his body completely numb. For two in particular it seemed like he would break at any moment. And they were not wrong. Issei fell onto Ross's chair, leaning his entire upper body back almost as if he were a doll. He had fainted. Everyone was shocked by what happened. Everyone wanted to do something, but at the same time it was as if they couldn't do anything, and the only one who reacted was Chow. "You better get used to it because this will be daily bread with Issei," said the black-haired man carrying Issei's body on his back. "Excuse me, sensei. I'll go drop Issei off at the infirmary." But the class," Ross was going to say when the bell rang loudly. They were so wrapped up in the melody that they didn't notice, but an hour has already passed, said Chow with an enigmatic smile, leaving everyone stunned. Everyone reacted to what the black-haired boy said and began to wake up. One after another they began to leave the classroom, some to spend time with friends before their next class, and others went straight home since they didn't have another class that day. Ross sat staring at the spot where Issei had touched in a lost manner. What was that all about? His day had started out horrible, and suddenly boom, this boy arrives and brightens it up. When she saw him play, she also noticed another strange thing, and that was the way he played the violin. Usually violinists have a small pad that serves to support the chin on the violin, and even though this one also had it, he didn't use it. In fact, he had the base of the violin almost resting on his chest, and, as if that were not enough, there was also a problem with his wrist, as if something was bothering him. "Ross-chan?" he heard next to him, revealing the white-haired old man. "Are you okay?" "Why, yes," answered the somewhat absent-minded silver-haired girl when she was surprised by the old man. "Odin, what do you need?" "We're going to get something to eat at the cafeteria with the Juka, and I came to let you know in case you wanted to eat with us," said Odin in a friendly manner. Yeah, I'll be there in a moment," said Ross, getting up and taking his things. He doesn't really know what happened, and he doesn't think he'll find out now, so he'll stop thinking about it. Although if there's one thing he knows, it's that his co-worker Ajuka was quite right. That boy is quite special. While all the university students went to do their things, two young people in particular went to the infirmary, the case of Chow and Issei. "I'm surprised that you still weigh so little despite having grown a little," said the black-haired man in a friendly manner to see Issei after so long time. The black-haired man knew that Issei needed to be treated, but he was slightly regretting going to the infirmary since he knows what will happen once Issei enters. Once in front of the entrance to the infirmary, the boy let out a loud sigh and then knocked on the door with his foot because he had his hands busy carrying Issei. "Come in," was heard from inside, causing Chow a bit of a headache. When he walked in, he didn't even flinch at the sight he saw. Nurse Kuroka, on top of a chair trying to get some medicines from a high cabinet door, giving an incredible display of her black panties. "Seriously," said Chowan with a vein swelling on his temple, "stop being so careless." The black-haired boy's scream caused Kuroka to freak out and stagger in her chair, about to fall, but thanks to her blessed athletic abilities she was able to land on her feet, albeit in a somewhat funny pose. "Chow, don't do that again, you almost scared me to death," said the brunette with a frown. "As if I cared, I brought someone," said Chow, taking Issei to one of the stretchers, who by the way had his face covered by his hair. "I'm sorry, I can't help anyone. It's my lunchtime," Kuroka said playfully as she took out a bag with a bento. "Believe me, when you see who it is, the last thing you'll want to do is go eat," said the black-haired man, putting Issei face up on the stretcher. "Naya?" the brunette said, surprised by what Chow said. She approached to see who it was, and from one moment to the next the bento she had in her hand was scattered on the floor. "I see Nya." The brunette had sharp eyes in a cat-like manner, but they weren't murderous or anything like that, rather, they were possessive. Before she could jump on top of the unconscious brunette, she was stopped by Chow. "Stop right there, she just fainted, and the first thing you want to do is disturb her sleep." "What kind of nurse are you?" said Chow, a bit stressed by the nurse's actions. "Chow Naya, it's Issei. Please let me lie next to him," said the brunette, desperate to be close to Issei. Chow gradually released the grip he had on Kuroka until the girl was completely free. This time it was no longer abrupt, rather he sat next to Issei and began to caress his cheek. "I see Naya. My dear, I see Naya," said the black-haired girl with longing and affection. "What happened? Did someone do something to her?" Not at all. I gave him a violin to demonstrate what I could do. You should have seen the faces they had, said the black-haired man, earning an angry look from Kuroka. You know very well what that does to Issei. Naya, why did you do it? Kuroka asked reproachfully, earning a bored look from Chao. I guess it's just a whim, said the black-haired boy as if it were nothing, making Kuroka a little more angry. It's been a while since I last enjoyed listening to music so much. Issei is the only one who can do that. Chao New York, the brunette was going to say, but was interrupted by the black-haired man's raised hand. Save the sermons for later, Chao said as he headed for the exit. Take good care of Issei. Nei-san. With that said, the black-haired man proceeded to leave the infirmary and let Kuroka have a moment alone with Issei. Kuroka let out an annoyed snort due to the black-haired man's attitude, but forgot about it almost instantly. What now calls her is to admire Issei's face. It's been so long, Issei. Naya, said the girl, caressing Issei's arm until she reached his wrist, which caused a groan of pain from the brunette. Just as I thought, that which still takes care of you. He lifted up the sleeve of the shirt that Issei was wearing to see in horror Issei's wrist, which was badly burned. What kind of animal is he to do something like that to you? The brunette asked sadly when she saw that Issei still had that painful expression. If only she had been more determined. Carefully, the brunette raised Issei's hand to the level of her mouth. She began to lick the part that was burned, and with that she relieved a little of the pain that Issei must have been feeling. Does it feel okay? I hope so, said the brunette as she slowly climbed onto the stretcher, getting on her knees and letting Issei's head rest on her soft legs. I'm glad to have you with me again, Issei, was the last thing the brunette said before summarizing her caresses and not taking her eyes off him. How long had it been since he was last able to do this? He didn't even remember it, but he did remember how much Issei liked to sleep like this. Calm down, Issei. Naya, just give me some more time and no one will ever separate us again, said the brunette with a sparkle in her eyes that made her look more beautiful than she already is. Chapter 2: Harsh Reality. Slowly the fainted brown-haired boy began to open his eyes to find himself lying on a stretcher. He looked around a bit and realized that he was in the infirmary or something. Did he faint again? It's been a while since he did it, but he can't help it. The violin is the only reminder of what once made him feel so happy. He looked around a little more to see if there was anyone else, but he didn't see anyone there. He thought that maybe someone left him here after he fainted, although he knows very well that the only one who could have done that was Chao. He got up from the stretcher and headed for the exit, and once outside he got a surprise because there was someone leaning against the wall in front of the infirmary door. A blonde that was obviously dyed, more or less the same height as Chao, blue eyes and semi-rimless glasses covering them. The blonde for his part looked up and saw Issei, who was looking at him curiously, causing the blonde to become very nervous. Hey, said the blonde with a difficult-to-decipher expression on his face. How are you? Issei just looked at him with a curious expression, causing even more nervousness in the boy. A few seconds passed until Issei took the small notebook out of his pocket and began to write something. Once he finished, he showed it to the blonde, who looked surprised at what was written. I feel fine, excuse me. Who are you? Hey, was what the boy said after reading what he read. Don't you remember me? I'm the guy who insulted you in class. Issei thought for a bit until he managed to remember who this boy in front of him was. He again began to write something in his notebook and showed it to the blonde. I remind you, although I understand that you have insulted me, my muteness usually bothers people. The blonde could only look at Issei with surprise, sadness, and guilt. What the hell is he talking about? There shouldn't be a single person on the planet who would be bothered by that. In fact, Issei has every right to get angry with him and blame him for it, but it's as if there was no resentment in the boy's heart. Do you even realize what you're writing? Said the blonde, watching as Issei tilted his head in confusion, sighed, and then bowed. I'm sorry about before. A couple of things happened and I ended up taking it out on you. Really, I'm sorry. When the blonde raised his head, he couldn't help but feel a great relief in his heart, since what he encountered was an extremely friendly smile from Issei, who went back to write something in his notebook. Don't worry, laughing face. The blonde sighed in relief and thought about doing something he should have done from the beginning. Shingo Naruse, nice to meet you, said the blonde while shaking hands with Issei, who was going to write something until Shingo interrupted him. It's not necessary. Your name is Issei Hyodo, right? Issei just nodded and then shook Shingo's hand and gave him a smile which was returned by the blonde. Hey, I know it's sudden but I still feel bad about what happened before. How about we go get something to eat? I'll treat you, said the blonde, receiving a refusal from Issei until the brown-haired boy's stomach grew, causing Issei to blush and Shingo to laugh a little. Let's go. Issei this time could only nod gratefully. Both began their way to wherever Shingo was going to invite him, passing through some of the other faculties, seeing how there were still many students either studying, finishing projects, chatting, etc. They also passed through the teacher's lounge where they could see an old man and a tall man with green hair looking like they were about to hit each other. There was also their teacher, Ross-sensei. The truth is that she doesn't remember very well, but what caught her attention the most was seeing another woman there. That black hair, those hazel eyes, that expression that only a feline could give you seemed strangely familiar to her. He preferred not to think about the matter and continued on his way with Shingo, who now seemed a little uncomfortable since he doesn't really know how to deal with someone like Issei. He wants to start a conversation, but it would surely be uncomfortable for Issei to walk and write at the same time. Besides, what could she talk to him about? She doesn't know him at all, and the only thing they have in common is that they are in the same class. They arrived at a cafe near the university and sat down. It wasn't long before a waiter took their orders. Shingo was a little surprised because Issei looked at everything very surprised. Issei, are you okay? The blonde asked Issei, who began to write something quickly. This is my first time in a place like this. What? Was the question Shingo asked, surprised. It must be a joke. You must have come with a friend or something sometime. The only thing Issei did in response to that was to start writing again. I have never had a friend. Shingo let out a gasp at what he heard as he thought about something that was tormenting him a little due to how he insulted him in the morning. How much has this boy suffered? Before he could speak again, he found a piece of paper that almost hit him in the face. Don't worry, despite everything I haven't had a bad life. I'm sorry, Shingo said with a complicated smile since Issei had read it completely. By the way, that way of playing the violin was simply magical. Out of nowhere, Issei seemed to have stars instead of eyes and looked at Shingo with excitement, causing the blonde to become a little uncomfortable. He wrote something in his notebook again and showed it to him. You also play violin? And no, said Shingo to see how it should be. Issei began to deflate. I play acoustic guitar and piano, although that conceited Chow is 1,000 times better than me at piano. Issei opened his eyes in doubt due to something he heard about Chow. Conceited? Yes, conceited. He does nothing but brag about his great talent, said the blonde, and then some funny tears ran down his face, and because of that I haven't been able to get a girlfriend. Suddenly all the attention in the place focused on the unfortunate blonde who regretted not being as cool and popular as Chow. Issei could only smile understandingly. Now that he remembers it, Chow was always very popular with the girls, and what to say about what happened every time he played a melody, they all went crazy. It's true, it was always like that since we were very young. Hey, now that I think about it, you and I know each other, right? Shingo asked, receiving a nod from Issei. Does he have any weaknesses? Again this caused Issei to laugh. This boy was very funny in his own way. He wrote something in his notebook again and showed it to Shingo. Not that I know of. I imagined as much, said Shingo, a bit depressed but quickly recovering. But leaving that lucidity aside, who was the one who taught you to play like that? From one moment to the next, all that fun atmosphere was over. Shingo was alarmed to see the expression Issei had on his face as it showed immense sadness. The blonde was thinking of apologizing, but Issei started writing again. The truth is, I don't know. You don't know? Shingo asked to see how Issei was writing again. I know someone did it, but I don't remember. Shingo lowered his gaze a little, causing Issei to be alarmed when he saw that he discouraged the blonde, but before doing anything he was met with a radiant smile from Shingo. Don't be sad, friend. There are times when I don't even remember if the socks I put on are the same color, said Shingo, amused watching how Issei just looked at him surprised due to what he heard. Issei wrote something slowly, then looked at Shingo, who still had that amused smile on his face as he waited for whatever he was going to read next. Issei faltered a little but ended up giving in and showed the sheet to the blonde. So we are friends? Shingo looked at him strangely at first but then realized what Issei meant. Can they even be considered friends? Not at all, he simply did this because of the guilt he felt for having insulted him, or so it was at first. Hearing a little about what the brown-haired boy's life has been like awakened something in him that no one had done in years. "No, we are not," said the blonde, causing Issei to get a little sad, but Issei turned to face Shingo, who gave him a kind smile. "But I would love to be one," Shingo said with that kind expression. "Issei, would you let me be one?" Tears were the ones that began to fall down Issei's face. Never in his life had anyone asked him this, and he couldn't help but he felt an immense happiness that was invading him little by little. He wrote something again with trembling hands and hoping that Shingo would understand, since he wrote it quite badly. "Yes, friend." Shingo could only smile radiantly at what he read, a smile that was accompanied by the brown-haired boys. After that, the waiter arrived with their orders and the young men got to know each other better. Issei was a little surprised by what Shingo was telling him. The boy had traveled to many places because his parents were in a good economic position, whether it was other prefectures or other countries, all related to his way of playing the guitar. "I also heard that the kid might even have a music career. All he needed was to finish his studies and audition for some well-known musicians, and he could sign with a record label." Issei, for his part, only told her a few things about himself, such as that he likes classical music, that he lives a little far from the university, and that his favorite food was paella. Shingo didn't want to ask personal questions since it was obvious from miles away that the brunette in front of him must have a very difficult life, so he thought it would be best not to ask those kinds of questions so as not to ruin the atmosphere. About 2 hours passed where they had fun at the cafe, but it was time for them to go home. Both now friends said goodbye and each went their own way. Issei had been very happy during all that time he spent with Shingo, but now that happiness began to turn into anguish with each step he took. The truth of the matter is that she was terrified of arriving at the place where she was going, but where else could she go? She has no friends or other relatives, and it is not as if she could stay on the street, so the only thing she could do was walk in a terrified and resigned manner to the only place where they would give her shelter, her house. Little by little he was able to see the house, which was very pretty and located in a very good part of Kuo. The problem lay in what he was going to find inside. He arrived at the entrance, and could already hear things falling and some breaking. "I have opened the door, and heard what is his daily bread." "Come on, you damn bastard, aren't you a man? Put it harder." "You asked for it, ma'am." "Ah, that's it, I love it." Issei could only sit at the entrance of the door, close his eyes and cover his ears. Is this really what he would have to live day by day for the rest of his life? Even though she covered her ears as hard as she could still hear the screams, moans, grunts, and dirty words coming out of the mouths of the two who were in the living room of the house. About 30 minutes passed where everything was those unpleasant noises for the brown-haired boy, until they stopped. There was only silence, which made Issei get up from the spot, uncovering his ears but not moving a single centimeter. A few more minutes of silence passed until a somewhat tall man came out of the living room, wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. When the man saw Issei there, he couldn't help but let out a gasp due to the fright he got. "Hello," the man said with a nervous smile as he adjusted his suit and tie a little. Issei, for his part, didn't even look at him. He just stood there, looking down, causing the man to quickly put on his shoes and leave the place. Issei gathered his things and headed to the living room and found a painting that he has to see almost every day. There were a lot of sake bottles around the place. There were also some bags with a substance that I honestly don't want to find out what it is. A lot of destroyed glasses and plates, and in the center of the place on a chair the main dish. There sat a dark-haired woman with blue-gray eyes and enormous breasts, wearing a disheveled kitchen dress. You could also see sweat covering her skin and her breathing erratically. Issei timidly approached the woman, who seemed not to have noticed him. He was a few centimeters away from her, and when he thought about touching her shoulder to get her attention, she quickly grabbed his wrist tightly, causing Issei to put on a pained expression on his face because the burns from a few days ago were still there. "Don't even think about touching me, you damn spawn," said the brunette with an angry expression on her face. Issei was terrified by what the woman said. She let go of the brunette's hand, got up from the chair and walked to a piece of furniture where there were some cigarettes, lit one and looked at Issei with an amused expression of drunkenness. You came early, I thought you wouldn't come back, said the brunette with a smile and a blush, because you always come at the worst time, huh? Now I could go look for some other slob to make me scream, but no, I have to take care of your disgusting ass. Just after saying that, the woman took one of the empty bottles and threw it at Issei. Thank goodness the woman was extremely drunk and failed to hit the scared brunette. Tell me something, monster, said the brunette as she clumsily approached Issei. Why don't you die? Really? Because as long as you're alive, this beautiful house that the government gave me will stay with me. Issei was seconds away from crying at this point. Was he really just a freak? A dead weight that had to be taken care of? Those questions had been tormenting him since childhood. The older woman finally managed to catch up to Issei and grabbed him by the wrist again, causing Issei to scream his teeth in pain. Does it hurt? Go ahead and shout for someone to come and help you, said the woman, and then put on a malicious smile. Or is it true you can't? Ha 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 ha. Issei now began to cry. All of this was slowly killing him. It has been many years of abuse, but he knows that he can't just leave. His heart doesn't allow it. Don't cry, you bucking son of a hitch, the brunette screamed out of her mind and gave him a fierce slap that sent him straight to the ground. Issei, almost as if he were an insect about to be killed, began to crawl until he reached the living room wall and leaned on it while he got into a defensive position, while he watched blood fall from the corner of his lips. Issei turned his gaze to the woman, who was staring at the ceiling statically while holding on to the living room table to keep from falling due to drunkenness. What am I doing? The woman blurted out of nowhere, and then looked down to see how tears were falling from her eyes. No, 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 no. The woman looked desperate as she held her head tightly and looked everywhere, until she finally managed to spot who she was looking for. Issei. Issei, my cute son, said the woman as she slowly approached a terrified Issei. What did I do? The woman managed to reach Issei, who looked at her in terror while hugging himself even more. The woman felt an unparalleled pain in her being and slowly brought her hand closer to Issei's battered cheek, who tensed up greatly when he felt the touch of the brunette's hand. My son, I am sorry, said the brunette as she saw Issei look away and cling even tighter. Don't do that, please. I'm your mother, forgive me, I won't do it again. Deep down in his heart he didn't want to. He knows that this will only happen again, as it always has. But his heart doesn't allow him to not forgive. The older woman closed her eyes in pain at Issei's rejection until she felt something tremblingly clinging to her neck. When she opened her eyes, she found a brown-haired man hugging her in a fearful but loving way, causing more tears to fall down her face. Son, forgive me, said the woman, returning Issei's hug. Don't ever go, you're all I have. Issei knows it. Those words are not lies, and that is precisely why he cannot leave. She is a broken woman who trapped him in this cruel and ruthless vicious circle. A brunette with her eyes closed is seen sitting in what appears to be a waiting room. There are also two more men in the place who can't help but blush at the wonderful woman in front of them, although their intentions were completely different. The most nervous one was more embarrassed because of how beautiful the woman in front of him was, while the other one, he would probably pounce on her if he had the chance. If it's not too much trouble, I'd like you to stop looking at me, please, said the brunette, showing her beautiful golden eyes, which looked hostilely at both men, who almost made fun of each other at the girl's expression. Hey, Kuroka Tujo-san, said to a man who looked through a door to see the aforementioned, who looked back at him. May you come in, please? Kuroka just got up from her seat and walked to the office, shaking her hips a little, driving the other two men who were with her crazy, a very bad habit of hers. Once inside, she saw an old man who must be in his 60s, with an amused look on his face which quickly changed to one of surprise when he saw the black-haired woman in front of him. Wow, it's been years since I last saw you here, Kuroka-chan, said the old man, looking from head to toe at Kuroka, who just looked at him bored. You've become quite a woman. Matsumoto-san, I don't have time for this, said Kuroka, sitting on a chair in front of the man who remained glued to her breasts. I need to see the file of one of the boys who were here. Of course, whatever you want, Kuroka-chan, although everything has a price and you know that, right? Said the old man, getting up from his place and walking towards Kuroka. Once the man was positioned behind Kuroka, he began to move his hands slowly towards her breasts, but before he could touch them, something happened that took him by surprise. Kuroka took an envelope out of her bag, opened it, and spilled the contents on the table. There were some photos that did not show anything convenient for the old man. Surely you enjoyed groping several of the girls in the photos, right? Said Kuroka, since the photos showed the old man groping and even making several girls do erotic poses. What did the laws call this? Abuse of power. The old man could only take a few steps back and sweat like a pig. How the hell did this girl manage to get those photos? This could be very damaging to him and his company. All of them were minors at the time. Pedophilia, said Kuroka as she stood up and took one of the photos before the old man's incredulous gaze. The police would love to find this treasure, Don, do you think? What do you want, said the man, resigned and frustrated at not being able to put his hands on the brunette, and to top it off, she had him in her hands. Issei Hyodo, I want all your files, said the brunette, more serious than ever. That useless mute? Said the man, a little surprised by what Kuroka wanted, because what? Before he could continue speaking, he received a strong slap from Kuroka, who had a frown on her face and dangerously sharp eyes. Call Issei like that again, and these photos will be all over the internet, said Kuroka threateningly, causing the old man to feel unparalleled fear. Now give me his file. The old man nodded fearfully and then stood up and walked to a file cabinet at the back of his desk. I spent a while looking for the file until I found it and left it on the table. Kuroka took the file and took a quick look at it, looking for the information she needs to start doing the great job that Issei will be having with her again. He spent a few minutes looking until he finally found it, the information he had been looking for so long. Adoption papers. Name, Issei Hyodo. Age 6 years. Gender, male. Blood type, AB. Mother's name? Father's name? Name of the adopter, Kateria Livia. Address? When Kuroka read that name, she couldn't help but feel a strong chill. It's been more than 10 years and still she can't forget what it was like to live with that woman. She was lucky enough to escape from that damned place, luck that Issei didn't have. Issei Naya, was what the brunette whispered to herself. Why, you already have what you want, and now get rid of those photos, said the old man, still nervous about what happened moments before. I don't remember making that deal with you, said the brunette, putting Issei's file in her bag, but I guess it's fair here. The brunette scattered the photos on the floor, causing the old man to pounce on them like a cockroach. Seeing that, Kuroka only gave an amused smile as she saw the old man so desperate for those photos. What bad luck for someone who has something called a photocopier. Once outside the place, she thought about going to eat something somewhere. In a way, the stupid looks that both the university students and the ones that men on the street give her stress out a lot. He entered a small ramen shop called Ichiraku. He found it by pure chance when he was helping the owner's daughter, whose bag with the ingredients to prepare ramen had broken. Once inside, he could see the old man who was preparing ramen for a blonde man who seemed strangely familiar to him. Arthur Naya? Kuroka asked, surprised, since, as she suspected, the blonde sitting there was Arthur, her colleague at the university. Kuroka-sensei, it's strange to see you around here, said the blonde, looking at the brunette, but quickly going back to eating the contents of his plate. Don't tell me you were planning to invite Ross Naya to this place, or did you? Kuroka asked, amused as she watched the blonde choke on his food. Naya, hahaha, you're so innocent. What do you want me to do? It's the first time I've had feelings for someone. I don't know what to do or where to take it, said the blonde, somewhat discouraged. First of all, get her to agree to a date with you, said Kuroka, seeing how Arthur was surrounded by a dark aura, and second, not thinking of bringing her to a place like this. How did you get here in the first place? My sister loves the ramen they serve at this place. I guess I just fell into temptation and now I can't help but come from time to time, said the blonde with a loving smile on his face. Faye Naya, huh? How are you? Asked the black-haired girl, remembering her colleague's little sister. Nervous, you know that the music competitions are about to start, and she is like the trump card of her university, said the blonde with a serious expression on his face. She's really good at singing, isn't she? Why do you look so serious? Kuroka asked, surprised by the blonde's sudden change of mood. It's not her, it's her tutor, said Arthur, looking at the brunette. Your tutor? Kuroka asked again now. He's very well known. Although more than a tutor, he's like a talent scout, said the blonde, taking a sip of drink from a glass that he had next to him, and then speaking again. He has helped Leifei a lot in his journey as a singer, but sometimes he irritates me. He hasn't done anything bad to you, right? Kuroka asked now seriously. Not at all, it's just that he's very ambitious and sometimes it seems like he exploits her a little. although Leify doesn't seem to mind, said the blonde, playing with the remaining soup of his ramen. Before she could ask about the guardian of the one now known as Leify, she felt a familiar and irresistible aroma sneak into her nose. She looked ahead and found herself faced with a hot and delicious bowl of ramen, accompanied by a kind smile from the owner of the place. Special for Kuroka-san, said the man without losing that smile and heading to prepare more. Thank you, the girl said, looking hungrily at the plate in front of her. And how did you find out about this place? Arthur asked curiously. It's a long story, the brunette lied, since she really wasn't interested in talking about it right now. More important than that, there's something I've wanted to ask you for a while now. Go ahead, said the blonde, resigned to getting an answer from the brunette. How did you fall in love with Ross, Naya? The brunette asked as if nothing was wrong, only to see Arthur spit out a big stream of soup at Kuroka's question. How did I fall in love? He doesn't want to tell the truth because he's afraid of being taken for a fool because of the simplicity of the situation. But after thinking about it for a few seconds, he realized that this could be a very good opportunity. Odin-sensei was something like everyone's father. He's the one everyone turns to when there's a problem, but as far as Ross knows, they don't talk to him much about that kind of thing. Ajuka-sensei, for his part, is the voice of command. He is the only one who can speak to the university rector without receiving a reprimand, and although he is one of those who spends the most time with Ross in a professional manner, he doubts that Ross has opened up to him on a personal level. That's why this moment was so opportune. Kuroka is the only person with whom he could open up emotionally, since she is like Ross's confidant. Therefore, she could give him some advice to at least get a little closer to the silver-haired girl. Well, said the blonde, blushing but with a serious expression on her face. It was love at first sight. Naya, hahaha, you're so cute, said the brunette, while holding her stomach and laughing mockingly. Deep down, I knew it wasn't a good idea, said the blonde, depressed by the way he was being made fun of. Calm down, it's not like that's a bad thing, it's just that Ross, Naya. Because of her attitude, it's hard to believe that you fell in love just like that, said the brunette, more composed but still with her cat-like expression. It's not just that, the devotion she has for her work, her tough but at the same time kind way of being, her eyes, her hair, said the blonde, blushing because now that he thought about it, Ross was the perfect woman. Her breasts, Kuroka said, spooning her food onto her plate. What are you saying? Arthur asked, upset by the brunette's comment. Oh, come on, are you going to tell me that not once since you met her did you look at her breasts? Asked the brunette, seeing how Arthur quickly looked away. I knew it. It was a coincidence, said the blonde, blushing and mentally reprimanding himself for having done it. Go ahead, Arthur. Naya, just imagine it, said the blonde, whispering to the blushing blonde. Imagine her on a romantic date, then both of them kissing under the starry night, and then… Kuroka-sensei, the blonde shouted, unable to bear any longer the mental work Kuroka was doing on him. Naya, hahaha, it's so fun to tease you, said the brunette, amused but without stopping looking at the blonde. If you want, I can help you. What? The blonde asked incredulously. Between us, I've met several guys who want to be with her. They're disgusting, Kuroka said seriously. You're very different, since you don't see Ross in a lascivious way. I would never do that, said Arthur, now more serious than ever, since that information was unknown to him. He never doubted that many men would want to be with the silver-haired girl, but the fact that they were just jerks was unknown to him. You, on the other hand, are very polite. You are handsome, tender, a little clumsy and easy to annoy, said Kuroka, amused as she saw Arthur blush at how she was describing him. I think you would combine very well with Ross's tough attitude, Naya. Then the blonde was going to say, but not before being interrupted. But you have to know something, said Kuroka, now more serious than ever. She is a woman who has suffered a lot emotionally. It will be very difficult to make your way into her heart, and there is even the possibility that she will not accept you. Kuroka saw how Arthur opened his eyes in surprise at that statement. A few seconds passed where neither of them said anything until it was the blonde who had to break the silence. I don't care if she's as damaged as you say, then I'll spend every last second of my life to heal her, said Arthur with devotion and love that came from just thinking about being the one who managed to break that barrier that protected Ross's heart. Well, said both co-workers, heard as they looked at the owner of the establishment with a smile. I will support you in your battle of love, young man. Here is a dish on the house. Both Kuroka and Arthur smiled at the older man's enthusiasm and gratefully accepted the new round. They had a good time sharing, either talking about university-related topics or Kuroka bothering him about Ross. After eating they walked together since their houses were in the same direction. They said goodbye at an intersection, and Kuroka continued her way home, or rather apartment. When she arrived at the place, she quickly heard footsteps coming in her direction, and after a few seconds she was tackled by a white blur. When Kuroka looked at the usual guilt, she revealed white hair, a small body, and eyes that were a spitting image of her own, eyes that looked at her with tenderness and love. "I'm here, Chiron," Kuroka said to the one now known as Chiron. "Nei-san, I miss you," said the little white-haired girl in a monotonous tone but still reflecting affection. "Me too, my beautiful Chiron. I bring you very good news," Kuroka said with a loving smile on her face and excitement in her voice. "What is it?" Chiron asked doubtfully. "If things go the way I think they will, someone very special might come to our home," Kuroka said with her cheeks flushed, which made Chiron frown. "I don't think you're going to tell me that you met someone, right?" the white-haired girl asked, a little angry. "You know very well that if you try to bring a man to the house, I'll get rid of him." "Even if that man is Issei Naya?" Kuroka asked with a saccharine expression on her face. When Chiron heard that name, she felt a warmth invade her being. Her eyes shone like never before as she remembered that boy who gave her so much love when they were little. "Oni-chan," Chiron whispered, unable to believe that boy could be by her side again. "Is what you're saying true, Nei-san?" "Yes, I just need to gather a few more things and Issei Naya will return," said Kuroka, using all of her being to keep crying from emotion. "Forks Oni-chan will return," the white-haired girl shouted happily while jumping from one side to the other. Kuroka couldn't help but smile seeing her little sister so happy. There were only a couple of things left, and she could fight, for the third time, for custody of Issei. Before she was just a weak girl, but now things have changed. She is totally determined to win this time and get Issei out of that despicable place. Place where the one she considers the evil witch lives. In a dark room in one of Koa's many houses, a beautiful melody is heard. The culprit of touching such a beautiful piece of art was none other than Chao, the popular boy at my art and music faculty. But the curious thing is that he was not alone. There was also a woman with her head resting on a small table who was moaning a bit. When the melody ended, the woman raised her head to reveal beautiful yellow hair and beautiful blue eyes which were a little swollen around the edges, giving a clue that she might have been crying. "Chao-kun, thank you," said the blonde as she approached the black-haired man who had a thoughtful expression. "You're welcome," the black-haired man answered softly but without losing that expression. When he least expected it, the blonde took him by her cheeks and gave him a soft and warm kiss. He tried to resist, but it was simply impossible. He could never refuse something she wanted to give him. Once they separated, the blonde gave him a sad smile and then headed out of the house. "I'm a very bad woman. I'm sorry for everything I'm doing to you," said the blonde, and then opened the door and left, leaving a static black-haired man who could only look down and let his hair cover his eyes and then whisper one last time, "Jin-san." Chapter 3, Prodigy. A new morning began in Ko. The sun was slowly rising in the same way that many of the city's inhabitants were getting up. Issei, for his part, opened his eyes slowly and tried to move as little as possible for a simple reason: his mother. Clinging to his torso was his adoptive mother, Kateria Levia, who had the strong scent of alcohol added to her slightly swollen and reddish eyes due to all the crying she did last night. For Issei, this is nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, it is just a normal day like all the ones he has lived before. From what he remembers, the first time he met her it wasn't like this. The woman took great care of him to the point of being somewhat overprotective, but almost as if by magic, from one day to the next she began to act violently. He slowly removed the brunette's arm from his waist since he couldn't be late, and he still had many things to fix. He stood up, covered his adoptive mother completely, and ended up giving her a light kiss on the forehead, a gesture which he doesn't know why he remembers with such affection. He headed out of the room so he could do the first big task of the day, cleaning up the mess in the kitchen. When he got downstairs, he was not surprised to see a pile of broken glasses, plates, the tablecloth on the refrigerator, and obviously a lot of sake bottles on the floor, both broken and complete. He let out a tired sigh and began his work. He will never forget the day when everything changed, when someone very important to him left without saying anything. He doesn't remember very well what that person was like, but he does remember those charming golden eyes that looked at him with so much love and concern. Once that person left, the real hell began. Being beaten day after day, having to stay up very late cleaning the house or getting up very early to do housework, suffering burns on different parts of his body, and obviously what terrified him the most, the psychological pain that the brunette has caused him. Useless, nuisance, bastard, scum, these are just a few of the words that the woman has used to refer to him, that created a small trauma for him and sometimes makes him think that he really is everything that Kateria says. Does he hate her? Of course not. After all, what person could give you so much love after saying such hurtful things to you? And even if he forced himself to hate her, he probably couldn't. He loves her too much after all. It doesn't matter the abuse, it doesn't matter the mockery, it doesn't matter that this woman is just using him. She is his mother, and no one would change that. After cleaning the entire kitchen and putting everything in its place, she went on to make a light breakfast, put everything on a wooden tray and headed back to her room. When he entered, he got the scare of his life because sitting on his bed was Kateria with her eyes open staring at him. "Hi," said the brunette without taking her eyes off the brown-haired boy. Issei for his part gulped a little nervously and began to approach the woman. He left the tray right on Kateria's legs and made a few gestures with his hands and mouth. "Good morning, did you sleep well?" "Yes," the brunette answered thoughtfully while Issei made gestures again and gave her a faint smile. "Glad to hear it." Kateria slowly raised her hand towards Issei's cheek, which was a little swollen. Once she reached it, she saw how Issei made a gesture of pain, which little by little turned into relief due to the caresses she was giving him. "I did it again, didn't I?" said the brunette with a regretful expression. "I hit you again." "And don't worry, it's nothing." That was what Issei told him again with gestures and a somewhat nervous expression. "Forgive me, I can't control it," said the brunette on the verge of tears. "Why, you know that I love you, right? Don't hate me." Without even expecting it, Issei caught the brunette in a warm hug that, unlike yesterday, was not fearful. On the contrary, he expressed all the love that Issei feels for her, and that only made her feel worse. "My baby, why are you like this?" Kateria asked as tears began to fall little by little. "Why do you always forgive me? I have only hurt you, but you." Issei separated from her, showing her that smile that the brunette likes so much. He made a few gestures which left Kateria stunned and hugged her again. "Because you are my mother." The brunette began to cry, tears falling one after another, as she screamed in pain due to all the pain she causes day after day to the only person in her life who has truly come to love her. "Issei," said the brunette, taking the brown-haired boy by the shoulders and looking at him with determination, "I am going to change, I swear. I will never lay a hand on you again. I will be the mother I should have been from the beginning." Issei just nodded happily at what the brunette said, gave her a light kiss on her forehead again, and took out his towel, clothes and some of his things that he needs for classes. He took a shower, got dressed and had breakfast quickly since it was getting a little late. He put on his sneakers and just when he was about to leave he was stopped. "Son, I'll have dinner ready when you arrive," said the brunette in a warm but nervous manner. "I know it will be delicious." It was the last thing he said to her in gestures before leaving. The brunette just stared at the place where Issei was standing a few moments ago, and then entered the kitchen. She saw that everything was impeccable. Without a doubt, Issei was like an angel on earth to her. No matter what she said or said to him, Issei would always forgive her no matter what. No matter what. He opened the refrigerator, and as he thought there were still about 4 bottles of sake left, he stared at them for a moment, and then took them out, desperately opened the first one, and drank almost half of it. "Issei, this will be the last time." "I swear," said the brunette, breathing erratically because she was drinking almost non-stop. "But it doesn't matter if I drink one last time, right? Will you forgive your mother? I know you will." "Issei." The brown-haired boy was walking with a different mood. He looked much happier, and that was due to everything that happened in the morning. If he was honest, he wasn't sure if his mother could change. After all, it wasn't the first time she said it. But I preferred to hold on to that than to be a pessimist and believe that the brunette would never change. He arrived at the university in high spirits, but with a small problem that made him a little nervous. He doesn't remember where his class was. Issei the brown-haired boy heard from afar as he watched Shingo trotting towards him. How nice that I caught up with you. Issei, just like yesterday, took out his small notebook and began to write. Good morning, Shingo-kun. Good morning, you're a little late, said the blonde with some malice as he watched Issei write something. A couple of things happened. I see. How about we go to the living room? Shingo asked as he started walking, followed by the brown-haired boy. They were talking a couple of things while laughing, Shingo making fun of Chow Chow because of the hatred he has for him for being so popular, while Issei just told him how great the black-haired man was in his childhood, causing more annoyance in the blonde. When they arrived at their class, they found a somewhat strange scene, at least for Issei, since for Shingo this was just a nuisance. A young man with brown hair was seen, just like Issei, although he had his hair combed back, eyes as black as night, and a seductive smile that had all the women around him melting. Hey Ryuichi-kun, is it true that you know several famous people? Asked a girl with stars in her eyes. Yes, because my father collaborates with a music production company. I have had the opportunity to meet several singers, said the one now known as Ryuichi in a somewhat arrogant manner. Kya, do you think you could help me meet one? Said another girl excitedly. Of course, anything for you, beautiful lady, said the brown-haired man at the end with a seductive tone. Kya. The boy just smiled arrogantly as he looked at the girls around him, but right from his gaze he found something unusual: a small brown-haired boy looking at him. Issei, what are you doing? Shingo asked suddenly, drawing the attention of all the women. Let's go to our seats. Wait, Ryuichi suddenly exclaimed, standing up. Damn it, Shingo whispered, a little tired, and then put on a forced smile. Hey Ryuichi. Good morning, vulgar Ryuichi said in a contemptuous manner. Did you perhaps approach me so that you could be around these beautiful women? Oh, of course not, my friend here stopped. I don't know why, said the blonde nervously, since all the women were giving him murderous looks because of the last thing Ryuichi said. Ryuichi for his part turned his gaze to Issei, who was still looking where he was sitting before. If he is not mistaken, this is the mute boy who arrived yesterday. Easy prey. Hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Ryuichi Kageyama, said the tallest brown-haired boy, extending his hand to Issei, who wasn't paying attention to him. Hey, Shingo said, lightly punching Issei on the arm to get him to react. Issei came to his senses and saw the boy who had his hand extended while a forced smile was plastered on his face. Issei shook his hand and gave him a smile before going on to write something in his notebook. Issei Hyoto, nice to meet you. Likewise, the boy said calmly but with some malice, something Shingo noticed. Okay, introductions made. Issei, let's go, said the blonde, taking Issei by the arm since he didn't want Issei to get involved with this arrogant man. Wait, I'd like to have a little chat with him, Ryuichi said calmly. The way you played the violin yesterday was splendid. Thank you. Tell me something, little one, said the boy mockingly, since unlike everyone in his class Issei was quite short. Where did you learn to play like that, hey? He stopped and called out to him as Issei stopped paying attention to him and instead picked up a guitar that was right behind his seat. It seemed a little strange to him as Issei looked at the instrument, as if it was the first time he had seen it in his life. I see that you are interested in my guitar. It is unique in the world, said the boy arrogantly. That Issei did not care. In fact, he wrote a little and then showed him the sheet. Excuse me, Kageyama-kun, could I use it a little? Everyone looked in surprise at what the little brown-haired boy had written. Yesterday he played the violin splendidly. Now it turns out that he also knows how to play the guitar? How does he do it? Yeah, who would have thought that the little one knew how to play other instruments too, said Ryuichi with a little sweat running down his temple. Issei looked at him confused for a moment, and then wrote a little more in his notebook, leaving everyone paralyzed by what he wrote. The truth is I don't know how to play the guitar. It was the collective cry made by everyone around, most of whom were women. What? Ryuichi asked, unable to believe how contradictory what he wrote before was with what he wrote now. Issei, enough with the jokes, let's go to our places, Shingo said, somewhat stressed by everything that was happening. Wait, Ryuichi said, finally finding something he thought might be a weak point. I really wouldn't mind if you did it, although, generally this is an instrument for people who can sing. The comment made Shingo sharpen his gaze as much as possible. He knew the guy wanted to laugh at Issei, but he never thought he would say something so hurtful. He could see that even some of the girls around him gave him dirty looks. He was about to intervene, but someone else spoke. Issei singing? Issei can do something even more impressive. Everyone froze upon hearing Chow Chow's melodious voice, who had a smile on his face as he looked at Issei. Anyone can sing, but tell me something, Kageyama, have you ever heard a guitar sing? The black-haired boy asked with a defiant smile. What do you mean? Raichi asked, somewhat intimidated since, according to him, Chow Chow is the only boy he can't surpass. How disappointing, said the black-haired man, and then approached Issei. Issei, how about a little demonstration? Issei tilted his head slightly, an expression that seemed quite tender to the women present, and then saw the black-haired man approach him. If you give them a show, I'll buy you a lemon pie, the black-haired boy whispered, amused as he saw the brown-haired boy's smile grow as wide as possible. Very well, everything is ready. Chow, what did you do? Shingo asked him, looking at him with a frown. Naru's just shut your mouth and enjoy, said the black-haired man in a mysterious way. It's already started. Hey! Was the noise Shingo made, and then looked at Issei. That's it. Fingering, a basic exercise that guitarists must do, said the black-haired man, watching as Issei stretched his fingers and played some strings. It is true that it is basic, but even the best guitarists have to spend a couple of weeks or even a month doing it to be able to play naturally, commented Shingo, since as a guitarist he knows very well the effort that is behind this exercise that seems simple, but it is anything but simple. Tell me, do you know what a prodigy is? Asked Chow Chow without paying attention to how everyone present except Issei was listening to him. Well, prepare yourself, because you are in front of one. I doubt that someone like Issei will exist for a long time. Issei was completely unaware of what was happening around him. He had never touched a guitar in his life, but at least the fingering was very similar to when he played the violin. He felt each string tremble in his fingers. Each sound was instantly recorded in his mind. He relaxed, taking a couple of breaths, and began. Minutes before Kuroka. This is so stressful, Naya, said the brunette, looking at a pile of medicines in front of her. Lift your head, Kuroka. We're almost done, said her colleague and friend Ross. Ross, Naya, you are my heroine, Kuroka said with comical tears running down her eyes. Yes, yes, whatever you say, said the silver-haired girl with a small smile on her lips. By the way, Ross, Naya, how is Chow Naya doing? Kuroka asked. Pretty good, his grades are impeccable, although it would be good if he worked a little on his attitude, said Ross, remembering a little of the black-haired boy's personality. Since we were little it's always been the same, Kuroka commented tiredly. He's your little brother, right? Ross asked, arranging the last of the missing medications. Yes, it's a bit complicated, said Kuroka, happily seeing that they had finally finished. Complicated? Ross asked now, sitting on one of the stretchers. Well, Kuroka tried to say somewhat doubtfully. Calm down, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, said the silver-haired girl with a friendly smile that the black-haired girl imitated. Thank you. The truth is that it is something very private that I do not want to talk about right now, said the brunette, taking some of Ross's things. I will accompany you to your living room. Thank you, Ross replied, proceeding to leave the infirmary with Kuroka. Both beautiful women walked towards the classroom where Ross was to teach, occasionally greeting some of the university students, obviously avoiding the perverts who were looking at them from head to toe without a bit of shame. Kuroka was perhaps the most bothered with this type of thing since she is very aware that she has developed a spectacular body. She was even very surprised when she took her measurements a year ago, since she thought that with everything she eats she should have a few extra kilos. But what really bothered him was not that, but the fact that he had not been able to see the only person he would allow to look at and perhaps in the future touch his body, his Issei Naya. This was going to be a good opportunity. With the excuse of helping Ross carry his things, she could see him and if possible talk to him a little. After all, if her plans go according to plan, in a couple of months she, Kaneko, and Issei will be living together, if possible forever. They were arriving at the living room and found an unusual sight. A lot of people crowded together. They were getting closer until both women heard a familiar voice saying something very curious. Tell me, do you know what a prodigy is? Well, get ready, because you're facing one. I doubt there will be someone like Issei for a long time. It was Chow Chow, with a smile that Ross saw for the first time yesterday when the new boy played the violin, while for Kuroka it was the smile she put on every time she admired Issei playing in the short time they lived together. Kuroka felt an unparalleled emotion immediately. No one but Issei could provoke something like that in Chao, so she turned her gaze to where everyone was looking and finally saw him, what she couldn't see the last time, and that was now filling her with hope, his brown eyes. If possible, listen to it in its entirety. Everyone was shocked by what they were seeing and hearing. It even seemed like what he said while ago he was lying as he began to play the guitar masterfully. Ryuichi, more than anyone, it's not like he wasn't capable of doing what Issei was doing now if he practiced for a few weeks. It's just that if what he said is true and Issei never touched a guitar in his life, this would be more humiliating than I expected. Xiao Chao was excited. Even though it was a bet, he never doubted his decision. He remembers very well that before Issei wanted to start with the guitar but ended up finding the violin first. Transverse flute, piano, double bass, ukulele, saxophone. Now it is more than clear to him, no matter what instrument is put in front of him, he will know how to use it. Ross, for his part, felt his heart race. The way he was playing and that expression of amusement on his face caused that reaction, but still there was something that kept her restless looking at Issei. Issei still saw himself in black and white. Shingo was paralyzed. As someone who plays the guitar admits that he never believed that Issei could really do it, he gave a forced smile seeing that a formidable rival has appeared. If what Issei and Chao Chao said is true, then how good would it be if he played the same old thing? And in the end, Kuroka, the brunette, had a cat-like smile that no one could ever cause her. A slight blush adorned her cheeks as she trembled a little since she couldn't hold back the urge to jump on Issei and hug him. She had to contain herself. Once the brown-haired boy finishes, he will let out the emotion he is feeling at this moment. Once Issei finished, no one moved a single muscle. Everyone wanted to say or do something, but the spectacle that Issei gave did not allow them to say anything. Chao Chao was about to say something when, to his surprise and everyone else's, a black blur caught Issei. I see Naya, I see Naya. Everyone watched as the Hexi school nurse had the poor brunette crushed between the floor and her breasts. Some of the men couldn't help but wanted to be in her place, while the women wondered where they knew each other from. Leave it alone, you'll end up suffocating him, said Chao as he pulled the brunette off of the brown-haired girl. Oh, okay, sorry, Kuroka said, looking at Issei in a neutral manner. I see Naya. She screamed once more to try to launch herself at Issei again, but was stopped by Chao and Ross. Kuroka, calm down. What the hell do you think she's doing? Ross asked, doing everything he could to keep Kuroka still, because even though it didn't seem like it, the brunette was quite strong. Let me go, let me hug my I see Naya, the brunette exclaimed, using all her strength to break free. Everyone was still at the unprecedented scene that was taking place in front of them. Kuroka, the hexiest and most desired woman in the entire university, being held by Ross and Chao to prevent her from jumping on the new boy who, apparently, would be everyone's hope in this year's musical competitions. Hey, are you okay? Shingo asked Issei, who agreed, still stunned by the attack that woman told him. Hey, how the hell did you do that? No one who hasn't played guitar since they were kids could do that, Ryuichi suddenly said, both angry and surprised. I see Naya, look at me. It's me, your beautiful Wani-chan, Kuroka said happily despite the struggle. Wani-chan? Stop talking nonsense and stop, Ross shouted, already tired of the situation. Nei-san, that's enough, said Chao Chao, not understanding when Kuroka became so strong. Issei, we better go sit down. Answer me, how the hell did you do that? I see Naya. Kuroka. Nei-san. Issei never liked being the center of attention. In fact, this situation was stressing him out a little. He wanted to scream. He wanted everyone to stop calling him, looking at him, bothering him. He quickly got up from the floor in front of everyone, who stopped everything they were doing to see what Issei would do. His eyes were covered by his hair, and he was breathing erratically. Just when Ross was going to ask him what was wrong, Issei did something that is not expected. Shout. Or at least he thought he screamed, since all the others saw was that he opened his mouth as wide as he could while looking at the ceiling. A few seconds passed like that until the little brown-haired boy finally came to his senses and realized what he did. She blushed and lowered her gaze a little. No one said anything. A bad omen for some of those present. The atmosphere became a little heavy, and just when they thought it couldn't get any worse, they saw Issei shed a single tear. How nice. Issei was scared by that scream and saw how an avalanche of girls pushed him to the wall. They all began to play with him. They caressed him. They lifted him up, since to their surprise the brown-haired boy was not only short but quite light. They told him how cute and tender he was, causing Issei to blush. Not so much because of the things they said to him, but because of the attention. Ross, for his part, also blushed a little. In his opinion, Issei looked devilishly tender. He felt it again. It was slight, but for that small second he could feel how his life gained color again. "Let him go" was heard behind all the girls to see Kuroka, who was not as excited as before. Rather, she looked a little guilty. She knew the moment she saw him what he tried to do: scream. It was like a little flashback for her, one where she saw Issei crying and trying to scream while a dark-skinned witch hurt him. "I see Naya." The brunette called Issei, who, leaving everything aside, stopped to look at the woman in front of her. "Are you okay?" "Yes, thanks," the chestnut-haired boy replied, writing in his notebook. For some reason, no one could intervene further. It was as if the meeting between them was extremely special. Kuroka smiled at the answer Issei gave her. He was always the kindest of all, and as far as she knows, he has never forgiven someone despite all the harm they have done to him. "It's good to see you again. I see Naya. I miss you so much," said the brunette, caressing Issei's cheek and giving him a loving look. Issei complained a little as Kuroka touched his injured cheek. The brunette noticed that and lowered her hand to Issei's shoulder. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize," Kuroka said as she caressed Issei's shoulders as if it were glass. Issei stared at him for a few long seconds without writing anything. Suddenly, he began to write something that would leave everyone surprised, especially Chow Chow and Kuroka, since they never expected something like what they were about to read. "Don't worry, sorry." "Who are you?" "Elsewhere." Again, ideal if you could listen to it in full. Men and women watched and listened with delight to the melodious voice of their university's prodigy singer, Leafy Pendragon. The blonde sang calmly and with a happy face. "Lately she has only been given good news." "One of them?" "Simple Issei Hyoto. Her private teacher and also manager in what many believe will be her successful career as a singer, warned her of something unprecedented." Co-University admitted the lost prodigy. "There is no doubt, Issei is the person who will bring out the best in her." Everyone in the class began to applaud at a new demonstration of perfection by the blonde, a blonde who only had one thing on her mind. "Issei-sama, I can't wait." Near Issei's house walks a man, rather a young man, who looked quite nervous, his short black hair, brown eyes and a little sweat running down his forehead. He was dressed in a custom-made suit. It was obvious that the boy was in shape. He also carried a briefcase which was shaking due to how nervous he was. His first job had finally arrived and he was nervous since several of his colleagues had warned him that this was a lost cause, but that at least he could have a good time. "This is Biko," who was slightly regretting taking this job. "Calm down, Biko. Why, you studied a lot for this day. You can do it," the black-haired boy told himself. He walked a little further until he came to one of the houses, in his opinion, the prettiest in the whole area. The problem lies in the fact that he feels a very bad feeling. In fact, he can't help but feels like leaving, but he can't turn back now. He stopped right in front of the door and rang the bell. Nobody answered. He rang the bell for a while and no one came out. He knocked on the door loud enough so that whoever was inside would hear him. Nothing. He let out a tired sigh and began to walk around the house in search of someone. He walked a little through the backyard which overlooked the kitchen entrance. He peeked through the windows and could see something that made his blood run cold: a woman on the floor. "Damn!" the black-haired man exclaimed, alarmed. He began to force the kitchen door open by pushing it. It took him about 4 pushes to knock it down, but he broke the knob along the way. "They could find me for this," said the black-haired man with a tear forming in his eye. "No, you idiot, the woman." He turned his gaze to the woman on the floor. She was only in something that looked like a baby doll. She was not hiding anything at all, and she managed to blush the dark-haired man, who began to move her a little. "Excuse me, are you okay?" Biko asked, receiving a moan from the woman. "Come on, don't make this any more difficult." And how could it not be difficult? With every breath the woman took, She could see how her enormous breasts swelled and how her curves seemed to become even more accentuated in the small, transparent suit. He was about to take her in his arms when he was attacked by her, who threw him to the floor, leaving him completely blushing now since he could see absolutely everything. Hick. Hick. Are you? The woman asked with a huge blush due to the alcohol. Hello, and my name is Biko, said the boy, nervous as can be. They sent me from the M municipality to see your situation. My hick situation? The woman asked, looking at herself. Kateria called me. Biko couldn't believe how drunk this woman was. She must have drunk quite a bit to end up in this state. He looked away a little and saw the reason for her drunkenness. 4 bottles of sake. Tell me, Biko-kun, how tall are you? The brunette asked with a wicked smile. What did he say? The black-haired man asked incredulously. The guy I called will arrive later. Don't you want to calm the fire that was lit inside me while he arrives? Said the woman, a little better since having Biko in front of her calmed her down a little. Biko was stupefied. He couldn't believe it. Possibly if she were a woman from the street she would understand perfectly. But in his eyes this woman was what men would define as good quality. And now that quality woman was offering herself to him while he waited for someone else. He got angry. Excuse me, can you get off of me? Biko asked with a frown, causing Kateria to giggle. What, are you gay? The brunette asked, amused as she saw how Biko blushed again despite his expression. It would be a waste, you're cute. What? Biko asked excitedly. You are cute very, said the serious brunette, as she slowly approached his face. Tell me, shall we do it? Biko just watched as the brunette approached him little by little. He wouldn't admit it, but deep down he wouldn't mind having relations with this woman. Everything that was happening added to the bulge in his pants forced him to succumb. Now he understood what his colleagues meant by good time. He slowly approached the woman to reciprocate whatever the brunette wanted to do, a brunette who smiled evilly. PFFF, ha 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 ha. Biko opened his eyes wide at what the brunette did. He didn't understand what was happening at all. Ha ha ha, you should have seen your expression. The brunette laughed and screamed, looking like she would collapse at any second. The dark-haired man frowned and blushed even more because the woman in front of him was just mocking him. He clenched his hands tightly, and in an explosive burst of courage, or stupidity, he grabbed the woman by the waist and pushed her towards one of the kitchen cabinets. Kateria looked at him surprised. Although she wanted to make fun of him a little, she never thought that the brat would have the courage to try to do something. It's not like it really matters anyway. You shouldn't tempt a man like that, the young man said seriously. Oh, it seems you have guts and also something big and hard, said the brunette, blushing since a bulge in the black-haired man's pants was clashing with her privacy, and if she was honest it looked quite big. At first Biko didn't understand. After all, he wasn't in all his senses, until he looked down a little and saw how his member covered by his pants was hitting the woman's crotch. The black-haired man tried to say until an unprecedented scene formed in front of him. The brunette had her breasts exposed and opened her legs as wide as possible to give the black-haired man a show. He took one of her breasts and began to lick it erotically, while still looking at Biko, who watched everything mesmerized. Do you like it? The brunette asked, now bringing a finger to her private part and caressing her over her panties. MHH. Tell me, do you like what you see? Don't you want to try it too? The nervous young man was speechless. Now that he had all his senses back, he didn't know what to do. He was supposed to be sent to fix a certain problem that exists in this house, and instead he finds himself with this beautiful woman who is inciting him to put aside his work to enjoy carnal pleasures. He was about to succumb to the excited gaze of the woman and those enormous breasts that were driving him crazy when he heard a noise behind him and found himself facing a bald man who must be in his 40s, with an incredulous look and the briefcase that he should have in his hand lying on the floor. Hey Kateria, what does this mean? Asked the bald man, looking angrily at the brunette and completely ignoring Biko. Isn't it supposed to be my turn today? Let's say that today is an exception. This young man here seems to have unparalleled potential, said the brunette, amused, hugging Biko so that her bare breasts stuck to his chest. Are you kidding me? The man said in a whisper and then put on a furious look. Stop joking, I had to trick my boss into letting me leave early and here I am? You better come here and spread your legs like the bucking boy you are right now. Biko was surprised by everything the man behind him said. He lowered his eyes a little and saw how Kateria looked at the man, amused due to being drunk, but she was still trembling. She was afraid. The manual of his life has always been the same: protect defenseless people, and that was not going to change, not even now. I hope you forgive me. Biko took Kateria by the cheeks, and surprisingly for her and the bald man behind her, he kissed her. He began to move his hands around her body until he touched her breasts and kneaded them a little. He separated from the kiss, leaving a panting Kateria, and then turned around and gave a murderous look to the other man, who was shocked when he saw him. Hey, you moron, don't you see that we're a little busy? Said Biko without ever stopping touching the brunette. If you don't leave right now, I'll tear you to pieces, and you better not even think about coming back again. The man let out a muffled scream before grabbing his briefcase and clumsily running away from the house, as the look the black-haired man gave him scared him beyond belief. While in the kitchen, Biko was still massaging the brunette's breasts, who was no longer panting and was looking directly at the black-haired man. Hey, you can stop now, said Kateria, amused as she saw how Biko first looked at her strangely, but quickly realized what she was doing. I'm sorry, Biko exclaimed, alarmed, separating himself instantly. It's a little late, don't you think? You said you came from the municipality, right? Asked the brunette, a little less drunk while she fixed her clothes. I could report you. Wait, I didn't mean to, said the black-haired man, sweating cold. Calm down, I'm really grateful to you, said the brunette, sitting on one of the chairs. Sit down. The black-haired man, still nervous, sat down on another chair facing the brunette. He calmed down and gave the woman a friendly smile. It seemed that they could finally have a normal conversation. Again, I'm sorry about what happened before, said the black-haired man apologetically, and then looked Kateria straight in the eyes. My name is Biko. I come from the PPM Child Protection Program. Although I shouldn't be here due to the age of the subject in question, he still lives with you, right? MMH? Who are you talking about? Said the brunette, surprised. Issei Hyoto, said the boy with a smile, looking at some papers, ignoring the gloomy expression Kateria put on when she heard that name. I was sent to see if. Get out, Kateria suddenly shouted, standing up from her seat and starting to take the black-haired boy out. Get out of here this instant. Yeah? Was the only noise Biko could make. When he came to him, he was already at the entrance of the house. Wait, we were informed that. What happens in this house only concerns us, the brunette shouted as she slammed the door in Biko's face. What the hell happened? The young man asked himself while scratching the back of his neck. He thought about insisting a little but immediately gave up on that idea since it would be expected that she would not answer him. He began to walk back to the agency while looking at one of the files with an expression that showed between disgust and concern. Is it really like that in that house? The young man asked himself with doubt. That woman. He shook his head from side to side to focus a little. He wouldn't give up yet. After all, he said he would protect defenseless people. Issei Hyoto, calm down, I'll get you out of that place, said the black-haired man, putting away the file, which was a photo of Issei as a child, with severe burns and many bruises around his body. Kateria. The brunette was breathing erratically while holding what appeared to be a piece of wood in her hands. It must have been that damn mute, said Kateria angrily. Now I'll really destroy him. Chapter 4, On the Edge. The place that brings us together today is the city's general hospital, where a couple of hours ago they had to rush young Issei due to all the blood he lost thanks to a certain event. The person who accompanies him is none other than Kuroka, the nurse at the university he attends, and the person who, possibly, loves him more than anything in life. I see, Kuroka said, seeing the unconscious brunette on a stretcher. Now, how the hell did we find ourselves in this situation? Simple, just go back a few hours. Excuse me, who are you? Kuroka didn't know how to react to what she read. She thought it was impossible since they spent a lot of time together when Issei was a child. But did Issei forget her? Hey, stop joking, Issei. It's Nei-san, said Chow Chow, just as confused as Kuroka. Issei just tilted his head slightly in confusion. He turned his gaze to Kuroka, who was shocked at the penetrating look Issei was giving her, almost as if he was seeing into her soul. He turned his gaze to Chow Chow and then wrote a little. Sorry, I don't know her. Kuroka began to tremble. Little by little her eyes began to moisten, and before everyone's surprised gaze she turned around and began to run. Kuroka Ross shouted, alarmed and surprised since it was the first time he saw her like this in the years they had known each other. "Sensei, I'll go look for her," said Chao, going out in search of her, not giving Ross time to answer. But the CLAR Ross said inside, the black-haired boy had already left WL, it would be best if you went to your seats. Everyone in agreed started to go to their seats. Shingo and Issei were about to go when a hand placed itself on Issei's shoulders. "Our talk is not over yet." The person responsible for that was Ryuichi, the brown-haired boy who did not understand why this dwarf was so important in the eyes of the only person he admires, Chao Chao. "Let's go," Shingo said, taking Issei's arm while giving Ryuichi a serious look. Classes started and everyone had their own ideas in their minds. Most of the class couldn't get Issei's masterful musical demonstration out of their heads. It seems that the boy can do anything when it comes to music, and that only makes them happy. With Issei, perhaps for the first time, they will be able to beat the neighboring university in musical competitions. Ryuichi was the one who had more things on his mind. He tried to play a couple of pranks on Issei to have a little fun, and the only thing he achieved was to make a fool of himself in front of the class, in addition to realizing that he still needs a lot to be at a level suitable for competitions. He always believed that he was just a few steps away from reaching Chao Chao and that they are something like rivals, but no. All he could see was how the person he respects and admires the most was left watching as if he were just another person at the spectacle put on by the mute person in the class. Shingo, despite paying attention to what Ross was saying, couldn't get what he saw a while ago out of his head. What Issei did was simply impressive. He doubts that anyone who picks up a guitar for the first time could do something like that, but how real could that be? He knows so little about Issei's past that he's not sure he believes what Chao Chao said, but if there's one thing he's sure of, it's that he has to practice harder, double or even triple what he normally practices. He can't be left behind in the race for those selected for this year's competitions, and the show Issei gave made that clear to him. Ross, the young sensei, was also very impressed with what Issei did, but what was really bothering her was something else. Kuroka and Issei know each other? It's the first time she sees her friend act that way, and from what she deduced, the relationship between those two must or should have been very strong to cause that kind of reaction in the brunette. Besides, he still doesn't understand why every time Issei plays, everyone around him seems to shine with his music while he does the opposite. It just gets darker. While this was happening in the art and music faculty classroom, in the infirmary it was a completely different environment. The stretchers were completely in disarray, many of the medications were scattered on the floor, and a black-haired woman was hitting the wall near one of the windows with the palm of her hand. The only spectator of all this is Chao Chao, who can only watch with sadness everything Kuroka did. "He doesn't remember me," Kuroka shouted, now increasing the force with which she hit the wall. "I think you should stop," said the black-haired man, approaching slowly. "Issei doesn't remember me," the brunette shouted again in frustration. "Nei-san," Chao Chao suddenly shouted, drawing Kuroka's attention as she stopped. Even though she stopped, she was still shaking and crying. Although Chao's scream brought her back, she still remembers the fact that Issei doesn't remember her. "Chao Naya," said the black-haired girl weakly without turning to look at Chao W. "What should I do?" "Issei Naya." "Calm down, you know better than anyone what he's like," said the black-haired man, taking the sheets that were scattered around the place. "Although he's a musical genius, he's also a bit clumsy, and many years have passed. But he remembers you. You lived with him for less time and yet he still remembers you," said Kuroka, frustrated. "Why not me?" Chao didn't know how to answer that. It's true, Kuroka was one of the people who spent the most time with Issei, and it's not like Issei was forgetful. He's just distracted. It's all very strange. "What if she forgot about me?" the black-haired girl asked, turning around and facing Chao, who looked with pity at the state Kuroka was in. "If that's the case, the dream of living together." "Don't jump to conclusions, something very strange is going on here," said Chao, missing Kuroka. "Just as you say, I spent less time with him, but he still remembers me. Don't you find it strange?" "I don't know," Kuroka said, wiping her tears little by little. "And what if she forced herself to forget me? What if she really doesn't want me around?" "You know he's not like that," said Chao, leaving a stretcher ready to be used. "Thinking about so many things won't help us at all. How about you talk to him after class?" But what if he doesn't want to?" Kuroka asked, scared just thinking about it. Issei is the type of person who gets carried away easily. Besides, if he doesn't remember you with words, there's always the lemon pie. There's no way he won't remember you with that, Chao said, amused. Kuroka, despite her fear of not being remembered by Issei, couldn't help but let out a light laugh at Chao's comment. Issei was always a fan of sweets, especially lemon pie. Really look at the mess I made, said the brunette, now calmer, noticing how the infirmary is. Would you believe me if I told you that while ago we ordered all those medications with Ross Naya? Chao just gave him a tired smile and began to pick up all the medicines that were on the floor. Apparently he won't be able to go to class this morning. They spent a long time tidying up the infirmary without saying another word. Kuroka was deep in her thoughts regarding Issei. Although now she can think things more clearly, she can't help but she feels anguish when thinking about how she will talk to Issei later. What if he really doesn't remember her? Or if he's doing this intentionally to hurt her after abandoning her years ago? No, Issei has never been like this. It's just the years. Yes, she is sure that once she speaks in a more pleasant way, Issei will remember her, and now they will have a happy life together. Chao, for his part, stopped thinking about the matter, and instead began to think about an even worse problem: his neighbor. Chao Naya, the black-haired girl, suddenly called. Do you think you could accompany me today? I would love to do it, said the black-haired man, taking his cell phone and showing something to the black-haired girl that caused her to open her eyes in surprise. I'm sorry, Chao Naya, that, Kuroka said, stopping herself from what she was about to say. I know, but what can I do? Chao said with a sad smile as he left the last stretcher in order. You know you can, the brunette tried to say again but was interrupted. I know that too, but maybe I really don't want to do it, said Chao, heading for the exit. Good luck with Issei. Now it was Kuroka's turn to look at Chao with a sad expression. Perhaps he was in an even more painful situation than the one she was in. No, it wasn't time to think about that. Chao is already mature enough to know what is right and what is wrong, and in case the black-haired boy was overwhelmed by the situation, he knows that the first person he would go to would be her. Not for nothing is she his Nei-san. She grabbed her purse and pulled out a hand mirror. She was a little startled when she saw her eyes were red and swollen. They definitely didn't look good on her. Nothing a little makeup couldn't fix. After getting ready a bit, she lay down on one of the stretchers and began to think about how to approach Issei. Should she do it in a loving way like years ago? Or maybe it would be better to be a little more daring and do it in a flirtatious way. The second one is completely out of the question. Issei would only be scared, and he doesn't think he has the courage to act that way with the brown-haired boy yet. What would they talk about? Hello, Issei Naya, do you remember me? I'm your hexy and cute Kuroka Wonchan, the one who escaped from that house with her sister and who, out of cowardice, wasn't able to take you with them. How has the hell been in which you've lived all these years? Clearly that is not an option. Thinking about this was being a real problem. She knows Issei better than anyone, and at the same time she knows so little about him. He spent so much time thinking about what he had to do that he didn't even notice when classes had already ended. In fact, he was surprised to see that it was time for the art and music faculty to leave. He quickly grabbed his things and rushed to teacher's lounge, where he met up with several of his colleagues. Kuroka, is everything okay? Ajuka asked with a drop of sweat on the back of his neck because of how he appeared so suddenly. Oh, everything's okay, said the brunette while catching her breath. Have you seen Ross? Ajuka was going to say but was interrupted by a white blur that passed over him. Kuroka, you won't believe me. The Pendragon boy invited Ross-chan on a date, exclaimed the old man Odin in an animated manner. What? Was what Kuroka answered, surprised. Damn talking corpse, get down, Ajuka shouted furiously, shaking off Odin, who was stepping on his back, and you know it wasn't like that. SW? The black-haired girl asked. Ross needed to go buy a couple of things for dinner, and coincidentally, Arthur did too, so they went together, said the green-haired man while cleaning his suit. Ah, love is a wonderful thing, Odin commented out of nowhere. I still remember when I was young and... They rejected you for being a pervert? Ajuka asked mockingly. No, rather they took pity on my future. They said that one day I would have to be colleagues of a tall, ugly man with green hair, Odin answered, frowning. Excuse me, Kuroka suddenly called, but without being able to get attention. Very funny, by the way, I already called the funeral home and they said your coffin is already prepared, said the green-haired man approaching Odin. Hey, the brunette called again, now a little annoyed. How curious. Your stylist called me and told me to tell you to get rid of the snot in your head before you go again, said the old man now, clashing foreheads with Ajuka. Old pervert. Vomiting hair. Listen to me, you two idiots. Both men trembled at the loud scream of the brunette, who had a dangerous aura running around her. Why, yes, the men called nervously. I don't have time for your nonsense. I need to know if you saw ISS pass by. The woman said seriously, but suddenly something caught her eye. I see. There, just outside the teacher's lounge, was the brown-haired boy with another blonde-haired boy. Kuroka sat down in her seat and took a couple of papers, signed a few, and at record speed she was already at the door. I'll leave early, please cover me, said the brunette without giving them room to respond. Both Ajuka and Odin gave each other a confused look, and then let out a sigh. The green-haired boy took the papers that Kuroka signed and headed for the door. Will you come with me? I really don't want to be alone with the principal, Ajuka asked and said to his colleague, who, strangely, fell asleep on his desk, coward. Meanwhile, the beautiful Kuroka stealthily followed Issei and his friend. They passed by a couple of stores looking at some manga and other things that interested them. They walked for a while until they finally separated. Kuroka finally had her chance. Her heart was beating 1,000 times an hour. She was seconds away from calling him, but something stopped her. Rather, it was Issei's expression. He looked terrified. He even seemed to be panicking. He was scared to see Issei like that, and if he thought things couldn't get any worse, he found something that reminded him that whenever you think nothing can get worse, yes it can. Kateria, the one who caused him nightmares for many years, was crossing the street, looking at Issei with anger while she seemed to have a tick in her fingers as she moved them nervously. Issei timidly approached the brunette, and without warning she grabbed him by the wrist and began to drag him. The brunette wanted to intervene, but the fear caused by seeing Kateria again stopped her. She could only follow them closely without making her presence known. They walked for a while until they reached a nice house where Kateria and Issei entered. Kuroka stayed outside looking for some way to see if something was happening, and when she thought about simply knocking on the door, she heard something that gave her a chill. You alerted them, I'm going to tear you to pieces. Out of nowhere, a lot of noise began to be heard. Something's possibly breaking when they fell, and Kateria's guttural screams. Kuroka became desperate. She tried to force the door, but she simply couldn't open it. She went around the house looking for another entrance until she found a window which was broken. She entered through there and headed in the direction of the noises to find an image that horrified her. Kateria Levia, strangling a bloodied Issei. The brunette had an expression between fury and sadness, while the brown-haired boy had an expression that showed despair and fear. Kuroka was left blank. This is like years ago, but on an even more serious level. Her body paralyzed, and the only thing she could do was watch the brunettes, one putting more force into her act and the other slowly falling into unconsciousness. He had to do something. If this continues, Issei will die. But he couldn't move. His body didn't pay attention to him until it happened. Issei's hands that were trying to stop Kateria were slowly losing strength until they finally fell. The brown-haired boy had his eyes half closed, and little by little you could see how the shine was leaving them. Let go. Kuroka screamed desperately, hitting Kateria hard on the head with a pot, causing her to fall unconscious to the floor due to the blow. Kuroka was on automatic mode. She had no idea what she was doing. She was just doing it by instinct. She approached the brunette's chest to check her heart rate, and could hear how her heartbeat was light and slow. Come back to me. Kuroka took her cell phone and quickly dialed an ambulance, gave a quick summary of the situation, and was told that they would arrive as soon as possible. Come back to me. The brunette stood at Issei's chest and began to do some sort of resuscitation as his heartbeat was slowly beginning to stop. Come back to me. That was it. He did everything he could, but he couldn't do anything else. If things continued like this, Issei would die. Come back to me. I see Naya, said the brunette, caressing the unconscious brown hair. The ambulance arrived almost immediately after the call. After all, it is not the first time they have dealt with the chestnut. They put him in the ambulance along with an unconscious Kateria and a scared Kuroka. They even had to revive him again because his heart stopped for a second. They admitted them both, Issei obviously in the company of Kuroka, while Kateria was placed in a separate room since in case she woke up soon it would be best to keep her isolated so she wouldn't do anything stupid like she has done before. The brunette couldn't stop looking at Issei, who now looked so calm, so full of peace despite almost dying. Although several years have passed, he realized that he hasn't really changed at all. His body seems to remain just as thin and light, blessed metabolism. His soft skin remains the same. Although his face looks more mature, he still has that childish aura about him. His lips remain just as thin, his lips. Despite what happened before, her being was screaming for her to kiss him, those lips that, according to her, were created only so that she could kiss them. She leaned a little towards Issei's face. A blush quickly appeared on her face. She was already feeling the brunette's breath colliding with hers. Their lips were already touching, and what was coming now was, "You could at least wait for me to wake up, right?" Kuroka opened her eyes in surprise and turned around to find someone she didn't think she would see in a long time. Biko. It's been a while, Kuroka. Arthur Pendragon. Many of the university students and some teachers have classified him as the perfect man, polite, serious but kind, even a little funny when talking. He was raised almost like a prince. His parents educated him in a way that was pleasing to everyone. They prepared him for absolutely any situation that was put in front of him except this one. Arthur-sensei, what do you think I should have for dinner? Stew or curry? The blonde's nerves were on edge for a simple, beautiful, and tender reason. Rossweisse, the silver-haired girl, with a cute expression of confusion, was asking him what kind of food she could eat today. And? Ross asked again, looking directly into the nervous blonde's eyes. I think curry would be good, Arthur answered with a noticeable blush on his face. Excuse me, are you okay? Your face is really red, Ross said, stepping forward and putting his hand and face dangerously close to the blonde's face. It's burning up. I'm fine, exclaimed the blonde, separating himself from the silver-haired girl. I'll go get something from the dairy aisle. Ross didn't even have time to answer as the blonde, racing car-like, disappeared from sight. Well, that was fast, said the silver-haired girl, starting to look for ingredients to prepare curry for her dinner. Meanwhile, Arthur was holding his chest while breathing erratically and trying to get rid of the blush caused by Ross's closeness to him a few moments ago. See, calm down, T, that was nothing. I just wanted to know why I was blushing, the blonde said to himself while adjusting his glasses. Although at university he gained the courage to say that they should go together, he quickly realized that imagining the situation and being in the situation are two completely different things. For some reason Ross is strangely neutral about everything. Apparently what Kuroka said was true, since from what he saw, the silver-haired girl doesn't even see him as someone. It's as if she doesn't even consider him something. He wasn't going to lie to himself. He felt a little offended by that, but he preferred to ignore that feeling, since if what Kuroka said is true and Ross has suffered so many heartbreaks, then it was obvious that he would have this type of attitude with him. But she also knows that she can't waste this opportunity. She must grab whatever flag she can raise so that in the near or distant future she can enter Ross's heart. Come on, Arthur, act normal, he said to himself one last time before returning to where Ross was. I walk around the supermarket for a while looking for her, not finding any trace of her until I managed to spot her, unfortunately with two guys who seemed to be flirting. So what do you think? We could go somewhere more private and get to know each other, right? Said a rather tall guy with the typical look of a jerk, while his friend just laughed unpleasantly. With your permission, I need to get a couple more things out, said the neutral silver-haired girl while trying to get some onions out. Oh, come on, we'll have a good time. Leave that stuff and come with us, said the shorter guy now as he stood between her and the onions. Arthur got angry seeing how they were bothering her, so he quickly walked over to them and stood right in front of the tallest guy. Hey, I'll tell them, since it seems they didn't notice but they're just bothering her, the blonde suddenly said, causing annoyance in the guy who gave him a threatening expression. Haha? Who the hell are you? Said the guy, getting dangerously close to Arthur. Get out of here before I smash you to pieces. I won't do it. Stop bothering her, said the blonde nervously, since he was actually a little scared. He was never much of a fighting person. All right, take it, the guy suddenly shouted, giving Arthur a strong punch in the face, sending him to the ground. You're not telling me what to do. I'm going to take this woman and do whatever I want with her. Arthur was intimidated by the way that idiot was talking. He looked at Ross and became even more intimidated since the silver-haired girl had an extremely angry look. Now come here, the guy tried to say, taking Ross's wrist, but out of nowhere everything turned upside down for him, huh? The guy fell noisily to the floor and then began to scream loudly because the silver-haired girl had her wrist bent at a very uncomfortable angle. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I never thought I'd have to practice it, Ross said, glaring at the bigger guy. Aniki, the other idiot stammered, quickly looking at the silver-haired girl. Hitch let him go. He lunged to try to hit him, but Ross elegantly dodged it, grabbed him by the neck and gave him a strong knee to the face. Mixed martial arts, thank goodness I practiced a little, said the silver-haired girl again, looking at both guys who were paralyzed with fear. Don't try that again with a woman, okay? You could run into these kinds of surprises. Hi! Was the shriek that both guys gave at the steps that Ross took in their direction. Get out was the only warning Ross gave before seeing both guys run for their lives. Idiot sensei, are you okay? Arthur just stared in surprise at the silver-haired girl, who before her eyes went from being a pretty maiden to an Amazon. The beating she gave those guys was simply incredible. Why yes, Arthur said absently. Your face is swelling up. Come on, let's go buy a bag of ice, said the silver-haired girl, offering her hand to the blonde to help him get up. After they bought the things they needed and left the place, Arthur couldn't help but think about what happened while ago. Although she was happy that nothing serious had happened, she felt as if her pride as a man had been hit a little. But normally he was supposed to be the one defending her, not the other way around. But he also felt relieved, seeing how strong Ross is. Gives him peace of mind since he tells him that the silver-haired girl can take care of herself very well. Arthur-sensei, Ross suddenly said, drawing the blonde's attention, would you like to have dinner with me today? The blonde opened his eyes wide. He couldn't believe that the woman he is in love with invited him to dinner. Perhaps this is. It's my fault he ended up beaten, so I thought the least I could do is invite him to dinner, said the silver-haired girl, cutting off the blonde's hopes. I see, said the blonde with a forced smile because he thought that Ross might be making advances on him. For a moment he forgot that Ross wasn't that kind of woman. You shouldn't, don't worry, this is nothing. Please do it, said the silver-haired girl somewhat harshly. I don't like to owe anyone anything. That certainly saddened him. He wasn't really inviting him out of pity or to compensate. He simply did it so he wouldn't have any kind of commitment or debt to him. He shook those thoughts out of his mind. No, it was not time to be sad. He must take advantage of any opportunity. Sure, I'd love to, said the blonde with a slight smile, causing the silver-haired girl to return it. Good, Ross replied with the same smile as Arthur. They walked for a while without saying a single word. Arthur because he didn't know what kind of topic to talk about. He didn't want to end up offending Ross with something he said. Ross for his part because he really doesn't want to talk. His mind is busy with something else, or rather, someone else. Issei Hyoto is a mysterious boy in her opinion. With his music he produces emotions in her that she thought she would never feel again. Although in her class there are boys with a lot of talent, and who possibly play the same as him, she can't help but think that he is too different. It is more like if his music were transformed into magic. Most of them tried to start a career in music, like Shingo or Raichi, while others tried to provide something to someone, like Chao, but Issei, for his part, is more like he wants to disappear with the music, become one with the melody and be able to calm and cheer the hearts of others. At least that's how she sees it. After walking for about 5 more minutes they arrived at a fairly normal apartment complex. They went up to the 3rd floor and headed to one of the doors so Ross could get the key and open it. The blonde felt a little nervous. Although it is not the first time he is alone with a girl, it is the first time he is with the girl he likes. As soon as he entered he could smell the delicious cherry aroma that ran through the place. Everything looked extremely neat and clean. Sit on the couch, I'll go get more comfortable so I can cook, said the silver-haired girl, leaving her coat on the coat rack and heading to another room. Arthur was left alone again. He knew it was wrong but he couldn't help but explore the place a little. He walked around a couple of times seeing how there were a couple of photos of Ross with the one he thinks must be his grandmother. There were also some instruments hanging on the living room wall. Now that he thinks about it, Ross is from the Faculty of Art and Music but he doesn't know what instrument he plays. what kind of music he likes or anything like that. He should have questioned Kuroka more. He approached a piece of furniture near the television and found something that filled him with doubts, a photo of Ross and an unknown guy hugging each other. He heard the door of the room Ross entered open and quickly returned to where he was sitting, turned his head to face Ross and was met with an image that he hopes to never forget in his life. The silver-haired girl came out in some extremely adorable pajamas. They were white with cat designs all over them. Arthur had to cover his mouth almost instantly as he thought drool would start falling out of his mouth at any moment. The silver-haired girl looked strangely at the blonde's behavior but let it pass for now. "I hope you're feeling comfortable," Ross said, walking into the kitchen and starting to prepare everything. "Why, yes, thank you," said the blonde, blushing and nervous. Again the silence. Arthur was getting frustrated with himself for not being able to have a more fluid conversation with Ross. How lucky for him that the silver film was being more participatory. "By the way, your sister is participating this year too, right?" Ross asked from the kitchen, catching the blonde's attention. "Yes, she's been practicing a lot lately. According to what she said, someone appeared that she needs to impress at all costs," Arthur answered. "Impress? That's weird. It seems more like everyone wants to impress her," said Ross in a more pleasant tone of voice. I wonder who it is." "I don't know, I just said that person attends our university," Arthur said, looking around the house. Ross remained thoughtful for a few moments. Chow could be the best option. After all, he is the most impressive thing they have for now. Shingo is not yet up to par to be recognized by the great Leafy Pendragon, while Raichi is too arrogant, an airhead, to be the person the blonde is referring to. "I see," the silver-haired girl replied to what the blonde had said. Ross concentrated on finishing the curry. After about 40 minutes it was more than ready, so he moved on to serve the table. Arthur, in an impulse to be a gentleman, helped her set the plates, but he didn't even seem to get Ross's attention. With the food served, Ross moved on to look for a wine to accompany the meal. "I hope you enjoy it," Ross said, waiting for Arthur to try the food. He was unconscious, but he couldn't help but think that this was like that typical scene of the Newlyweds, where the loving wife waits expectantly for what her husband has to say about her food. He took a taste and was surprised that it tasted strangely normal. "It's okay?" said the blonde with some doubt, causing Ross to let out a slight smile. "At least you're honest," said the silver-haired girl, pouring some wine into Arthur's glass while the blonde mentally scolded himself for the bad answer he gave. They both ate dinner again in silence, a silence that was killing Arthur, and that was very comfortable for Ross. He didn't even notice when they had finished. "That was delicious," said the blonde, gaining courage to do something. Ross-sensei. HIC. The blonde was alarmed by the strange noise the silver-haired girl made. He slowly raised his gaze to find another image that seemed unique to him. Ross had a goofy smile and a blush on her face. Her head moved from side to side slightly, giving Arthur the impression that she was drunk, very strange considering it was only one drink. "What was it you said?" asked the silver-haired girl, slowly getting up from her chair and awkwardly approaching Arthur. "Edo," the blonde said nervously, thinking that Ross had gotten angry. It's been a long time since a boy so cute and my age called me by my name," the silver-haired girl exclaimed happily, pouncing on the blonde, who was red as hell. "WWY-sensei?" the blonde asked nervously, not knowing what to do. Such nice muscles, why didn't you beat up those idiots before?" "It looks like you're strong," said Ross, almost scolding as he leaned even more on Arthur. "If I had done that I would have beaten you this." Arthur felt his heart almost jump out of his chest as Ross gave him a soft, wonderful kiss on his cheek. "And no W8," the blonde tried to say, struggling a little because although he knows he is very lucky to be able to hold Ross this way, he is not yet ready. "What did I bother you?" Ross said, starting to walk away from the blonde and heading somewhere else. The blonde didn't know how to answer that. He never thought Ross would get drunk so quickly. She went from being the strong and tough Ross to a fun and playful one. "It doesn't bother me, it's just that," the blonde tried to say until a noise that the silver-haired girl started to make him alarmed. Ross began to whimper. Arthur narrowed his gaze a little and saw how tears began to form in the silver-haired beauty's eyes. Because others don't like me," Ross said, starting to tremble. Is it because I'm ugly?" Arthur felt a tightness in his chest at what Ross said. He began to approach timidly, and when he was a few steps away from reaching her, the silver-haired girl stood up clumsily. "Get away, don't come near me," the silver-haired girl shouted, trying to get past but tripping. Her body was not in a good position to fall, so she would probably hit herself hard, but to her surprise she felt him stop, tilted her head to see who was helping her, and met worried blue eyes. Arthur looked at her with pity for what he was hearing. Apparently all the heartbreaks have made the beautiful woman terrible. He tried to speak, but the silver-haired girl threw herself at him again, while she began to cry. "Why can't I be happy?" the silver-haired girl asked the sire. "I just wanted to be loved." Arthur chose not to say anything this time. Ross was surely too drunk for reason. The only thing he could do was reciprocate his hug and wait for him to calm down. A while passed where only whimpers and moans could be heard. Arthur couldn't help but wonder what he had to do with the guy in the photo. A few more minutes passed, and everything became silent. Ross fell asleep. Arthur took her in a bridal manner to head to the room Ross had entered before. He opened the door with some difficulty, and found a fairly normal room, a somewhat large bed, a desk where there were a few books, and a television mounted on the wall. The blonde opened the sheets of the bed and deposited Ross, who had red eyes due to crying while ago. Despite that, Arthur couldn't help but blush because of how beautiful she is even after crying. He moved his hand closer to caress her cheek, but a whisper from the silver-haired girl stopped him. "Issei Hyodo." "Issei Hyodo? Who could that person be? Is he her brother?" "Impossible, they have different surnames. Some close acquaintance of theirs, or is he the guy in the photo?" He put those thoughts aside and went to cover the silver-haired girl, who was still mumbling some incomprehensible things. He got up, went to get his things, and went to leave the apartment. Issei Hyodo, what kind of person was or will be in Ross's thoughts? Arthur could only scratch the back of his neck in search of forgetting about that a little and saying the last sentence of the evening. "At least I want a kiss." A black-haired boy was looking at the door of his apartment tiredly and a little nervous. "Why?" "Simple. I have inserted the key to open the door and enter your apartment." Just as I expected, the lights were completely off. He looked at the floor a little and found something else that was expected, another pair of shoes. He threw his things in the entrance and headed to the living room, only to meet that person he had longed to have in his life for so long. A blonde, with beautiful blue eyes, a nervous smile which only increased the tenderness of her expression, and her body covered by a one-piece blue dress which did everything possible to cover her wonderful measurements. "Hello Chao-kun," said the beautiful blonde nervously. "Jin-san," said the black-haired man with an indecipherable expression on his face. "How did it go? Anything new to tell?" the blonde asked, getting up from the chair. "I was able to meet up with an old friend," Chao commented as he walked to the living room window to open the curtain and reveal the beautiful moon that lights up the night at this moment. "I see, I'm happy for you," said Jean, walking towards Chao Chao. The blonde, once in front of the dark-haired man, put her arms around his neck, pressed her body a little closer, and brought her lips towards Chao's. She was about to join their lips, but the dark-haired man spoke. "Yamato-san," Chao suddenly said, paralyzing Jean. "Where is he?" "Well, you know," said the blonde without leaving the proximity with the black-haired man. "I see," said Chao without stopping to look into the blonde's eyes. "Yes, so right." After saying that, the blonde went to kiss Chao. It started as a simple union between their lips but quickly turned into a slightly more daring kiss. Their tongues met at a midpoint and began to dance together. Their blushes at this point were already more than noticeable. For Chao, this was the kind of kiss he would love to try every day, a kiss that fills his heart with happiness, one that is only matched by the music his idol plays and the only person he wants to reach, Issei Hyodo. For Jean, on the other hand, it is an extremely tempting kiss, but at the same time it is proof that she is doing something terrible, something for which she will never be forgiven if she is discovered. But despite that, despite knowing that she is on the edge, she cannot help but want to do it. Chao began to slowly raise his hands towards the blonde's waist, who moved a little closer while kissing the young man. At some point during the exciting kiss they were giving each other, Chao began to lose track of what was happening, and one of his hands, mischievously, reached one of the blonde's breasts, who opened her eyes and pushed Chao away. "No," the blonde exclaimed, somewhat frightened. Chao was shocked by what the blonde did and could only stare at her with wide eyes. No, the blonde tried to say, approaching the black-haired man, who only raised his hand as if indicating for her to stop. Calm down, it's not your fault. I did something wrong, said the black-haired man, looking away. An awkward silence formed. Jean tried to say something, but her voice didn't come out. She knows she has no right to claim anything. After all, she was the one who pushed them to this. She tried to say something else, but Chao got ahead of her. Yamato-san will arrive any moment, said the black-haired man, looking at the moon through the window. You better go. The blonde tried to say again but stopped. Chao is right. For now it would be best to listen. I'm sorry. Don't worry, the black-haired man answered without letting the blonde see his expression. Jean just lowered her gaze and proceeded to leave the place. Chao, for his part, brought his fingers to his lips as if trying to analyze what happened a moment ago. He clenched his fists in frustration and sat on the floor, causing his hair to cover his eyes. Seriously, what should I do? The black-haired boy asked into the air, looking up and showing his expression, which was one of concern. Issei nei-san. Chapter 5. Bad Memories and Protection. Kuroka and Biko held each other's gaze without saying a single word. Biko looked at Issei and was shocked at the state he was in. Kuroka, for her part, tried to understand what the hell the black-haired man was doing here. It's horrible, the black-haired man suddenly said, bringing Kuroka out of the trance she was in. I knew her situation was delicate, but I never thought it would reach this extreme. What are you doing here? The black-haired girl asked, confused. I thought that you... let's just say that things didn't turn out the way I would have wanted, said Biko with a forced smile. Do you know the boy from somewhere? Yes, well, you could say it's been a long time, answered the black-haired girl, leaving Biko thoughtful, who after wandering a bit in her memories seemed to remember something. Issei Naya? Wait, the black-haired boy whispered and said, calling Kuroka's attention. Issei Naya, Kuroka, is this the boy? SSHHH, shut your mouth, imbecile. Don't interrupt his sleep, said the brunette, now silencing the black-haired man. And yes, it's the Issei Naya I always talked about. Now you have to answer. What the hell are you doing here? I'm sorry about what happened before, Biko apologized. Somewhat embarrassed. I come from the municipality. They entrusted me with this case since it seems that the person in charge of Issei Hyodo has been behaving in a somewhat strange manner. Weird? Really? Look at the state Issei is in. Would a weird person really leave a young man who can't even speak like that? Kuroka said, missing Biko because of something she heard in the middle of what the black-haired girl was saying. What did you mean by that? A young man who can't speak? Biko asked, confused, managing to get a sigh from Kuroka. Seriously, you don't know? The brunette asked, receiving a denial from Biko. Issei Naya is mute. What? The black-haired man said excitedly at what he heard. He took out a bunch of files from his folder and began to search through them until he finally gave up. Those idiots. So they hid it from you. It seems that you have done well in life, said Kuroka ironically, seeing Biko completely frustrated by what he had just discovered. Stop joking, how the hell do they forget? The black-haired man began to say slowly and then stopped and chose his words carefully. Why did they hide it from me? Who knows? No one has ever cared about Issei Naya, no one. Kuroka said, looking sadly at Issei. Kuroka, Biko said quietly. I could have helped him, said the brunette while tears began to form in her eyes, but I. Biko just looked at Kuroka with pity, approached her and hugged her over the shoulders, making the brunette reciprocate the gesture by clinging to Biko's arms. I was scared, Biko, I really was, Kuroka said tearfully. I had no choice, Chiron. Sure, it's okay, you did what you had to do, said Biko, stroking Kuroka's hair. Things don't always go the way you want, and you know it. Kuroka just kept crying as she let out her feelings in Biko's arms. She's waited years just to meet Issei again, and what's going on? The brown-haired boy doesn't remember her, and to top it off, she sees how she almost dies because of another of her fears, Kateria. You always wonder spokes of this boy, but it seems you forgot to tell me the other version, said Biko, releasing Kuroka so that they were face to face. The brunette wiped her tears and faced Biko. Very good. All right, kids, today a new child will join our big family, said a blonde woman with a killer body, wearing an outfit similar to a nun's while looking at a bunch of children who started to murmur things. Come, Issei. Suddenly, a little brown-haired boy appeared from the entrance door to the place where they were, who looked at everything with genuine curiosity. After inspecting the place, he turned his gaze to the other children, who had a happy expression because for some unknown reason, they felt that this boy was very special. He is Issei Hyoto. He is 6 years old and unfortunately he is also one of the children that the stork forgot to deliver, said the blonde with a comically sad expression, causing the other children to say, "Buh," except for 3 children who did not take their eyes off Issei. What are your favorite toys? What do you like to eat? Do you want to play prince and princess with me? Suddenly, everyone started bombarding the little brown-haired boy with questions. He just looked at them with a calm expression, but without answering any of the questions. Don't be shy, Issei. Answer what they're asking you, said the older woman with a kind smile. Issei just looked at her for a few seconds and then started moving his hands and mouth, but without making any noise. The woman was a little surprised by this. When she read the report, it said that he was an incredibly healthy boy, but it turns out she was very wrong. What? Was the only thing the blonde could say while looking at Issei. Among all the crowd of children who did not understand what was happening, one began to approach Issei. Once in front of him, he began to make gestures similar to Issei's and then speak. My name is Chow Chow, said the boy who looked at Issei, who was staring at him. Do you understand me? The brown-haired boy looked at him a little longer, and then showed a somewhat funny expression, as if he was holding back laughter. Chow was confused by what Issei was doing as he suddenly saw him, laughing, without making any noise. He's mute, Chow Naya, not deaf, a black-haired girl suddenly said, coming with a little white-haired girl, who came with somewhat mocking smiles at Chow's mistake. My name is Kuroka and her name is my sister Chiron. The boy who spoke to you before is Chow Chow, he's also my brother. Issei smiled and was about to speak, but was interrupted by the little white-haired girl who grabbed him by the shirt and pulled it a little, drawing Issei's attention. She looked a little shy, but as if she had swallowed the courage she needed, she pulled out a paper and a pencil from behind her hand, causing Issei to immediately understand the message. The brown-haired boy took the paper and began to write something and then passed the paper to the older woman, who read it, and then smiled and looked at all the children. Sorry about what I said before, I'm mute. I'm sorry if I'm a bother because of my muteness, but I really hope we get along. The older woman said out loud, causing several of the children to let go out and, since they didn't understand what was going on with Issei well. I can say with certainty that you will get along very well with the other children. By the way, if you need anything you can ask me, it's okay. Thank you. By the way, what is your name? You can call me Mother Gabriel. So you also left that orphanage? Biko asked Kuroka, who was caressing Issei's hair, who had a peaceful expression on his face due to the caresses. Yes, that's how we met him. I was the oldest of the children who were there, so when Mother Gabriel was not available I was in charge of helping the others. But at one point in our life in that place I began to worry only about Issei, said the nostalgic brunette, and then put on a sad expression, and then she arrived. I see Naya. Come here, said to little Kuroka, calling Issei, who with a smile, ran with Chiron, who was carried like a horse on Issei's back. Nei-sama, Oni-chan and I are playing, could you give us a little more time please? Said Chiron with a tender expression that made Kuroka smile. I'm sorry, Chiron, but I also want to spend time with Issei, Naya, said the brunette, watching as the white-haired girl pouted and got off Issei's back. After that, both children snuggled close to Kuroka, who hugged Chiron with one arm and began to caress Issei, who rested his head on Kuroka's lap. I don't know if I've already told you, but you know that you are my everything, right? Daily. Naya, haha, I'm sorry, I guess my love for you is overflowing uncontrollably, said the brunette happily. It's true, you always shout at us that you love us, and sometimes it's a little annoying, especially because of the looks the other kids give us, said another voice which belonged to the little black-haired boy who had an annoyed expression on his face. Don't be shy, Chow Naya, deep down you know that you love spending time with your Kuroka Nisama, said the playful brunette, making Chow blush. Shut up, said the black-haired boy sharply but still blushing. Naya, haha, you are so cute, said the brunette, causing Chiron and Issei to laugh along with her. Whatever, Issei, how about we go to, Chow was going to say when suddenly the door to the playground opened, revealing Gabriel along with a dark-haired woman, who looked very young but you could tell she was older. Wow, you've done a very good job here, Gabriel-san. This looks more like a big house than an orphanage, said the brunette woman, surprised by everything she has seen in this place. Thank you, Livia-san. I've tried hard to make sure the children here know they have a family, said the blonde kindly, but what if we get to the point? You said you wanted to adopt, right? May I know why? Well, it's a bit complicated, said the brunette with a complicated expression. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. As long as you take care of the boy or girl you adopt, I'll be happy, said the blonde, putting a hand on the brunette's shoulder. Thank you, said the brunette, and then among all the children she saw those who for her were the ones who stood out the most among all the MMHH? Was the noise that Gabriel made, and then directed his gaze to where the brunette was looking. Issei. Issei? Was the brunette's question. Issei what? Issei Hyodo, the blonde said. Hyodo, wait, is he? Yes, just don't talk about it, said the blonde, sad because of what the brunette was implying. Well, said the brunette, approaching the group of children. Kuroka didn't really know why, but she was alarmed when she saw the woman approaching them, not because she was going to do something bad, she didn't understand it very well, but she felt as if that woman had a strong internal problem. She looked at her little sister, who he had an expression similar to hers, although the fear could be seen more. He saw Chao, who was looking at the woman in a bored manner, but you could tell that he was prepared for anything, and at the end of all, Issei, who almost by inertia got up from Kuroka's lap and began to walk in the direction of the brunette, who was a little surprised by the little boy's action. Issei slowly approached the brunette, while he seemed to study her a little. Once they were face to face, the brunette crouched down to the brunette's height and gave him a smile. Hello, little one, my name is Kateria, what is yours? Asked the brunette, watching as Issei took out a somewhat crumpled paper from his pocket and a pencil and then began to write. Issei has a very strange name. They tell me that a lot, said the smiling brunette, caressing Issei's hair a little. The brunette never stopped looking into the brunette's eyes, as if he were trying to find something. Suddenly, and to the surprise of those who were watching, Issei brought his finger closer and squeezed the brunette's left breast a little. Who opened her eyes, surprised by what the little brunette did. Excuse me, are you okay? Yeah? Kateria didn't really understand what was happening. The boy squeezed her chest a little and then wrote that W. What do you mean? You don't have to be sad. I'm not sad, what makes you think that? Kateria asked with a nervous smile. His eyes, they look like those of someone I saw suffer, but I don't remember well. Kateria stood back a little because for a child he said very precise things. She knows that children for some strange reason can feel things that adults cannot, but she never thought it would be so precise. Issei, and it's nothing, how about? The brunette was going to say until the paper was placed in front of her again. You can cry if you want, Mother Gabriel always helps me when I want to cry, I will help you. Kuroka didn't really understand what was happening because she had Issei on her back, so she didn't know how to interpret the current situation, but suddenly something happened that surprised everyone. Kateria began to cry, and then took Issei by the cheeks while looking at him with the love that only a mother could look at her son. She gave him a couple of caresses and then took him by the waist and lifted him up. Issei, thank you, said the brunette, smiling and with tears coming out of her eyes. Tell me, wouldn't you like to go with me to my house? Wouldn't you like to start a family? Kuroka, Chao and Chiron opened their eyes in an expression that looked like terror, but above all Kuroka, it simply couldn't be real. Issei, her little brother, her little brunette was going to leave. They? Was what the brunette suddenly said, pointing in their direction, seeing how Issei smiled at her and nodded her head. Issei, there are many, I really can't. Issei lowered his head sadly, causing Kateria's heart to break. The woman knew it wasn't right, but she couldn't help it. She felt as if she couldn't deny the little brunette anything. It's okay, Issei, they're coming with us, said Kateria with a smile, causing Issei's eyes to light up, and he gave him a big hug. Calm down, little one. After Issei let go of the brunette, he proceeded to get out of her arms and run in the direction of Kuroka and the others. He wrote something quickly on a piece of paper and showed them what he wrote. Wani-chan, the lady said that she will be my new mother. I see, Naya, said the black-haired woman in shock. So are you going to leave? Oni-chan, Chiron said with tears forming in her eyes. Issei, don't be stupid, you don't even know who she is and you already trust her? Besides, that means that you will leave, don't you think about us. All the times we rejected adopters just to stay together? Chao said, angry with the brunette for how selfish he was being. Issei was a little confused by what they were saying until he seemed to remember that he forgot to write something else on the paper. You guys are coming with us, laughing face. That? The three said at what the brunette said, who just smiled amusingly to catch everyone in a hug with his small arms. Kuroka looked in the direction of Kateria, who was talking to Gabriel. In a way, this is a good option. They always rejected the other adopters since there was always something they didn't like about them, well, and also so as not to separate. Despite that strange feeling he had before with the brunette, he didn't look that bad. In fact, he looked like someone capable of taking care of the four of them. The only problem was the other two. Really, since you arrived you've gotten us into trouble, Chao said, scratching the back of his neck a little while he seemed to think about something. Well, I'm going with you, Nei-san. What are you going to do? Kuroka looked at Chiron, who was looking a little uncertain at Issei and Chao, but then she shook her head a little and looked at Kuroka with eyes that only showed determination. I'll go wherever you, Oni-chan and Chao and I go, said the white-haired girl, taking Issei's hand and Chao's. The brunette just let out a sigh and put on a somewhat forced smile before giving everyone a hug. Then we'd better say goodbye to Mother Gabriel. Wow, who would have thought that I would adopt all four of them? Said Biko, surprised by what he was hearing. Yes, at first it wasn't that bad, believe me, but after the first year she started to change, said the brunette, frowning. She was always very overprotective of Issei. She even got to a point where she kept him away from us because we could hurt him. And in the second year everything became hell. More specific? Biko asked, as if waiting for the black-haired woman to clarify what she was saying. She hit Chiron. Brat, why are you so clumsy? Because of you Issei got hurt, Kateria shouted angrily while she had her hand raised, and with her other arm she hugged Issei, who was holding his elbow. Oh, Oni-chan, Chiron said with her cheek red from the blow that Kateria gave her. Listen, what the hell do you think you're doing? Said Kuroka, who approached her sister, who couldn't take it anymore and started to cry now. Shhh, here I am, calm. Just get her away from Issei, said the brunette, and then crouched down to Issei's height and caressed the place where he hit himself. Darling, are you okay? Does it hurt a lot? Issei seemed about to cry, but not because of the blow, rather because of something else. He made a couple of gestures with his mouth and hands to make it clear what he wanted to say. Why did you hit Chiron? Issei, look, she disobeyed when I told her not to do crazy things around you, and because she disobeyed you got hurt. She deserved it, the brunette said, looking at the brunette, who didn't seem to understand Kateria's logic very well. You damn witch, Kuroka suddenly said, drawing the attention of Kateria and Issei as the black-haired girl was slowly approaching them. How the hell can you think of hitting a little girl? The little girl you adopted? I'm going to teach you, Issei Naya? Just when Kuroka was about to do something stupid, she ran into a shy brunette who had his arms open as if protecting Kateria. Witch? Did you call me a witch? Damn brat, am I going to Issei? Kateria, who was also about to do something irreparable, stopped as Issei turned around and now seemed to protect Kuroka. She made a few gestures to understand what she meant. Wanted to. Don't fight, families don't fight. Both seemed to calm down at what the brunette gestured. They looked at each other and then sighed. The brunette approached the little white-haired girl, who tensed up when she saw Kateria approaching her. Kuroka, out of inertia, put Chiron behind her, causing Kateria to would stop. Chiron, I'm sorry, said the brunette regretfully. The white-haired girl only looked at her a little before hiding her face in Kuroka's legs. Issei, come, I'm going to treat your wound. Kateria stood up and took Issei's hand, who as she walked away looked at Kuroka, who looked back at her. Once they were both out of sight, the black-haired woman took Chiron to treat her cheek before it became more inflamed. And Nei-san, I am sorry, said a scared black-haired man, and I could. Before she could continue speaking, the black-haired woman took Chao and hugged him while she gave him soft caresses in his hair. Sure, it's okay, said the black-haired woman, feeling how little by little Chao and Chiron, who was still clinging to her, stopped shaking. Don't worry, things can change, I know they will. And just as Kuroka said, things started to change for the worse. Kuroka, Chao and Chiron didn't understand it. Suddenly Issei, more than being a son or a brother, became a shield for both sides. Kateria was increasingly violent and unstable but calmed down once Issei approached her. Kuroka was something similar. She always argued or even fought with Kateria, either because she yelled at or punished Chiron, or because she hit Chao for doing things wrong. The only two moments when she could be calm were when her little brothers went to class or when Issei was with them. Things weren't getting any better. Kateria was now not only in a state of rage every time she was with Kuroka, Chiron, or Chao, but she also got angry at Issei for interceding for them in what she said was a well-deserved punishment. Obviously, all this was just a time bomb that would have to explode at some point, and apparently this would be that moment. Rain and thunder made music on this cold night. Kuroka was playing with her brothers, waiting for the evil witch to come through that door and start a new discussion. While she watched the others play, she wandered a little in her thoughts. The truth is that she had been thinking about this for a while. Things are already getting out of control in this house, and she can't wait any longer. They must leave. I talked about it with Chao at the time, and the black-haired man seems to support the idea. With Chiron it is not necessary since she will go wherever with her. The problem was Issei. Although he has also suffered some of Kateria's outbursts, he does not seem sad at all and cannot understand why. The loud noise of the front door opening caught the attention of the four. They waited a few moments trying to find out what it was, and at the entrance to the living room Kateria was seen, with her clothes disheveled, wet from head to toe, and with a bottle with a suspicious liquid in it. "Wah, finally I'm at home," said the brunette in a horrible state of drunkenness. "Where are my children?" Kuroka instinctively stood in front of everyone, looking angrily at Kateria. The brunette finally seemed to regain her composure a bit and looked back at the black-haired girl. "What? Some problem?" said Kateria with a malicious expression. "You're drunk. What the hell are you doing coming here like that?" Kuroka asked, a little scared, since from what she knows, drunk people don't usually know what they're doing. "What do I do? Ah, yes, do you know what I do?" said the brunette, walking towards Kuroka. "I do whatever the bucking want." Right after shouting that, she slapped her, knocking her to the ground. Kuroka was stunned by the strong blow that the brunette gave her. Where's Issei? Hick, come on, useless, defend her, be a hick man, said Kateria, looking everywhere searching for Issei with her eyes. MMHH? Between her and Kuroka stood Chao, who was shaking a lot but didn't seem like he was going to back down. The brunette just looked at him angrily and raised her hand again. Just when she was about to hit him, Issei crossed, causing Kateria to stop. "Issei," said the brunette with the blush of drunkenness very marked on her face, "are you with them or with me?" "I see, come here," said Kuroka, already recovered from the previous blow. At her sides were Chiron and Chao, trembling with fear. "Issei, will you leave mommy alone?" Kateria asked again with tears forming in her eyes. "You know that mommy can't be alone." "I see, don't listen to her, she just wants to hurt us," Kuroka said now desperately. "Don't forget, we are a family, the four of us." Issei didn't know what to do. His expression only showed anguish. He loves his brothers. They are the ones who took him in when no one else wanted to. But he also loves Kateria. She has given him that love that he had been looking for so long. "Well, so it will be like this," said Kateria with her eyes covered by her hair. When she looked up, she showed her eyes, which only showed anger. You brainwashed Issei. Kuroka was scared when she saw how the brunette referred to her, and she was even more scared when she began to approach her with clumsy steps. Once in front of her, she grabbed her by the hair and began to drag her to the bathroom. "It's your damn fault. I knew I should never bring them with me. Issei was the only one who should come," the brunette screamed out of her mind. Once she got to the bathroom, she put a plug in the sink and started filling it with water. "Let her go," Chao shouted desperately, trying to make the brunette let go of Kuroka, although the only thing he achieved with that was getting a punch in the nose courtesy of Kateria. "Don't touch me, you filthy worm," the brunette shouted. "Seeing how the sink was already full, let's see if you keep bothering me once I do this." Without waiting another second, she began to choke Kuroka, who moved her body desperately, trying to break free from Kateria's grip. "Is this what you wanted? Oh? You've exhausted my damn patience," Kateria shouted, taking Kuroka's head out of the water and then submerging it again. Kuroka felt her lungs begin to fill with water. Her vision began to darken little by little. It seemed that this would be her end, and perhaps that would be what this lunatic would do to others. "Chiron. Chao. I see. I'm sorry." I'm so sorry, I should have avoided all this. Before he could continue with what would be his last thoughts, he felt Kateria's grip weaken, until at one point he couldn't feel it anymore. He immediately pulled his head out of the sink and began to cough up all the water that had gotten into his lungs. He couldn't hear or see well, but he could hear some rather loud noises. With the little strength she had, she began her way out of the bathroom in the direction of the noises she was hearing. Little by little, her senses began to function as usual, and once she entered the place where the noises were, she opened her eyes in horror. Chiron was sitting on the floor with blood running down her forehead as she seemed to slowly faint. Chao was by her side hugging her and trying to keep her awake. The highlight was on the bed in that room. Kateria was giving Issei blow after blow, who only put his hands in a sign of protection. He could see that Kateria had blood on her leg, and it seemed to be hers. Damn mute son of a hitch, Kateria shouted as she gave him blow after blow. Kuroka didn't know what to do. Everything in a matter of seconds turned into a damn madness. She was seconds away from dying. Her sister seemed like she was going to faint at any moment, and Issei was receiving the beating of his life. Nei-san, the brunette, heard next to her, looking at Chao, who had tears running down his eyes. Chiron, we have to get her out of here. The bleeding won't stop. Kuroka unconsciously approached her sister and took her in her arms. Chao, for his part, helped her and walked her to the exit of the house. Once at the door, Kuroka seemed to regain all her senses. Issei, where is Issei, Naya? The brunette asked, looking everywhere. Nei-san, Chiron is leaving us, Chao shouted desperately. Issei, Kuroka shouted again, just to see Kateria coming down the stairs. So you were going to leave, huh? Said the brunette with a malicious smile. Close the damn door, and come to me so I can buck you. The brunette tried to advance but was stopped by Issei, who clung to her leg while biting her. Issei, Naya, Kuroka exclaimed, trying to reach him but being stopped by Chao. Chao, Naya? Chiron, said the black-haired man desperately. The white-haired girl was increasingly on the verge of losing consciousness. She had to make a decision. They could stay and help Issei at the risk of Chiron bleeding to death, or they could take the white-haired girl to the hospital and leave Issei with Kateria. For a moment everything was in slow motion for Kuroka. Chao crying, Chiron fainting, and Issei getting beaten again. No matter what he chose, he would lose anyway. I looked in the direction of Issei, who, despite being in the situation she was in, returned Kuroka's gaze. It was only for a second, but he smiled. Kuroka clenched her teeth and hands in sadness and frustration. She took Chiron again and looked back at Chao. Let's go, the brunette said harshly without looking back. She had to take advantage of the fact that Kateria was entertained with Issei to be able to leave. Chao nodded and looked at Issei one last time. Tears kept falling, not only because he thought that they would leave Issei, but also because he couldn't do anything, just watch as his family vanished before his eyes. The three of them ran as fast as they could away from that house, the house where the evil witch and her little brother lived, whom they had to abandon. Kuroka at this moment, despite the neutral expression on her face, could only repeat one phrase over and over again. Issei, Naya, I'm sorry. Damn, that was terrible, Biko said, surprised by Kuroka's story. The brunette just sobbed as she remembered that she turned her back on Issei, but she had no choice. It was that or see Chiron die. Plus there was also the pressure exerted by Chao, who seemed much more desperate than her. When I saw him again a few days ago, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. I just couldn't believe it, said the brunette without taking her eyes off Issei. I really thought I would never see him again. But here it is next to you, Biko said with a smile that Kuroka did not reciprocate. He doesn't remember me, the black-haired girl whispered. What did you say? Biko asked. He doesn't remember me. When I talked to him, he didn't remember me, Kuroka said with a defeated expression. Biko just kept silent this time. The more I heard their story, the stranger the situation became to him. Kateria loved them at first. What the hell happened? And what is this about Issei not remembering her? Is he ignoring her for abandoning him? Or is it something else? Both black-haired men were alarmed as Issei seemed to slowly regain consciousness. He moved for a while before opening his eyes and seeing Kuroka and Biko, who were just looking at him. Issei, Naya, said the brunette with a faint smile, and then went on to hug the brown-haired boy. I'm glad you're okay. The brown-haired boy didn't know at first how to respond to Kuroka's action, but after a few seconds he hugged her back. It was strange, but he felt immense nostalgia when he hugged the brunette. "Hello, Issei, my name is Biko," said the black-haired man, causing Issei and Kuroka to look at him. "I'm from the municipality, and I came to help you." Issei started looking for something until Kuroka spoke to him. "You can speak in sign language if you want," said the black-haired girl affectionately. "I know that too." Issei smiled and went on to make a few gestures. "You brought me?" "Yes, you were in critical condition when I arrived," Kuroka said, causing Issei to slowly remember what happened. When he did, he put on a sad look and made a few signs. "My mother, is she okay?" Kuroka didn't know how to respond to that. Many years have passed and Issei doesn't even remember her. Who knows how he will react if they tell him that Kateria is also hospitalized. Before he could answer, someone came through the door. The three of them looked at the person in charge to see the doctor, who was coming with some papers. "Issei Hyodo, right?" said the doctor, making Issei nod. "You should really thank the young lady here. Sorry if I sound fatalistic, but if it wasn't for her you could have died." Issei looked at the brunette and bowed his head slightly in gratitude. Kuroka just smiled a little and caressed her cheek. "Now, regarding your mother, she is fine now. She will have a migraine for a few days, but she will be fine," said the doctor with a smile. "You should be careful." "Excuse me, regarding that, I have some papers that prove that Mrs. Kateria Levia is not fit to continue taking care of Issei," said Biko, taking out some papers and then giving them to the doctor. "MMHHIC, but what will happen to young Issei? Someone has to take charge, right?" the man asked, since he preferred to get that doubt out of his mind right away. Kuroka was going to say, but to everyone's surprise, Issei got up from the stretcher, snatched the papers from the doctor, and began to tear them up. "Issei." The brown-haired boy had a worried expression on his face. He began to search desperately for something until he found it, a pencil in the pocket of Biko's jacket. He took it out of there and began to write something on one of the pieces of paper. "No, you can't take me away from her. Issei, understand, you're not safe with her," said Biko, getting Issei to write something again. "Where is it?" "Huh!" exclaimed the doctor, confused by what he read. "Where is it?" "In room 317, said the doctor, as Issei quickly put on his slippers and ran out of the room. Everyone was surprised by what happened a few moments ago. No one really knew how to react. "That was intense," said the doctor, as if trying to break the tension. "I see Naya, I'll go see him," Kuroka said, getting up from her chair to head to Kateria's room. "Thank you very much for everything," said Biko suddenly, bowing to the doctor. "It would be best if you went with." "Wait, there's something you need to know," said the doctor, now taking some papers out of his folder. "It's regarding Miss Levia." Biko took the papers and began to read them. When he finished reading, he didn't know whether to run towards Issei and Kateria or go to his office and beat up all the useless, negligent people in the place. We never knew why they wouldn't let us reveal these kinds of things until we learned that the hospital director had a relationship with Miss Levia. "But not anymore," said the man, heading for the exit. "I could lose my job because of this, but at this point I don't care. That boy has suffered a lot, I know. And I want to believe that unlike the others who came to help him, you really will do it. Good luck." Once the doctor left, Biko stayed for a few moments analyzing the situation. When he seemed to find a solution to all this, he took a deep breath and then went to the room where Kateria was. I walked through a few hallways until I managed to spot Kuroka, spying inside the room. I reached her side and touched her shoulder a little as if to let her know I was there. The brunette just acknowledged and then made a sign for her to look inside the room. There was Issei, being hugged and caressed by Kateria while the brunette looked at him lovingly. "I just don't understand. Issei knows what happened. He's not an idiot. Why the hell is he still with her?" said the frustrated black-haired girl. Biko just watched the mother and son interaction in silence. Although Kuroka didn't seem to understand, for him it was another story. Now that he read those documents, everything made sense. What happened when he met her, why Issei is still with her, everything. "I think I know why," said the black-haired man, drawing Kuroka's attention. "Forks? Then tell me why," exclaimed the black-haired girl. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you, not yet. I would risk a good man's job," said the black-haired man, and then fixed his gaze on the black-haired woman. "Kuroka, answer me with all the sincerity you can. Would you do anything for Issei to be with you again?" Whatever, he answered without a hint of doubt in his words. I'm glad. Well, this is what we'll do. It's been a week since the last incident with Issei. Biko and Kuroka promised to keep the incident a secret from others, be it students, teachers, or Biko's work colleagues. Ross, for his part, apologized to Arthur for last time, although the blonde was more embarrassed than grateful for the apology since the silver-haired girl did it in front of all the teachers. We'll stop at this point as Ross was making perhaps the most important announcement of the year for many in the room. The selection for those who will participate in this year's musical competitions will begin tomorrow morning. I really expect a lot of things from you, said the silver-haired girl, watching as everyone began to murmur. Here we are again, this year. Yes, Shingo said to himself. He felt someone tug on his arm a little, already knowing who it was. Have you participated before? Yes, last year, although it didn't go as I would have expected, said the blonde, somewhat resigned, but now things will be different. Good luck, I know you will do very well. Thank you, and what about you, won't you participate? Shingo thanked his friend and asked. I really don't know, I'm not really interested. You're crazy? Naru, stop yelling in class. I'm sorry. Everyone in the room started laughing at what happened. Even Issei covered his mouth so the blonde wouldn't see his smile. But what do you mean you won't participate? Don't you know that most people here just want to be able to participate and win the competition? The blonde asked again. You have to do it, Issei, a voice suddenly said behind them. Chow, it's good to see you. Chow, what the hell do you want now? Shingo asked, annoyed by the presence of the black-haired man. What? Can I greet my friend? Chow said with a haughty smile on his face. Rather, Naruse, shouldn't you be practicing? Don't let the same thing happen to you as last year. It won't happen again, the blonde answered, embarrassed. Issei looked at everything with a smile. In his opinion, they looked like very good friends. Suddenly he felt someone touching his shoulder and turned around to see Ryuichi looking at him, somewhat annoyed. Just so we're clear, I'll be this year's star, you hear? Ryuichi said, pointing at Issei's forehead, who just smiled at him before writing something. Cheer up, laughing face. Ryuichi just gritted his teeth at how clueless Issei was being. No matter how he looked at it, he just couldn't accept that Chow admired someone like him. Ross, for her part, had her eyes fixed on that strange group of talents in the room. Although she appreciates all her students, those four seemed to perceive music differently. Ryuichi, Chow, and Shingo were extremely good in their areas, but the person who most caught her attention at the moment was Issei. She doesn't really know anything about him. She plays the violin masterfully, and apparently he is her friend's brother, but apart from that, nothing. Besides, there is something she still can't figure out, and that is that strange sensation that Issei provokes when playing the violin. No one had ever managed to fill her with as many emotions as Issei did. He didn't even realize it, but for a moment everyone in the room was staring at him. When he realized it, he immediately got up from his seat to face everyone. Did something happen? The silver-haired girl asked, surprised, when suddenly one of her students timidly spoke to her. And nothing, it's just that it's the first time I've seen her smile like that, said the girl, approaching her and showing her a photo. When he saw her, he was stunned. The photo showed her apparently looking in Issei's direction with a dreamy expression and a very marked smile on her face. Delete it immediately, Ross exclaimed with a blush, and then sighed as the dismissal bell began to ring. See, classes are over, you can go now. Some sighed, others smiled. Others didn't know how to interpret the situation, and Issei just took his things and started to leave with a grumpy Shingo who muttered how much he hated Chow Chow. Issei has always been considered somewhat absent-minded and even careless towards others and himself, but even he is not so much so that he doesn't notice that the university nurse has been acting unusually strange towards him. They always run into each other when he arrives. She greets him in a much more animated way than the others, and sometimes she feels that the brunette is watching him from time to time. So that's why I think Chow should go to hell. Hey, are you listening to me? Issei came out of his thoughts when he heard that. He looked to his side and saw Shingo, who was looking at him confused. Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts. It doesn't matter. By the way, you don't really plan on entering the competition. If I'm honest, I think you could do very well considering the innate talent you possess, said the blonde with a smile. I'll think about it. Issei just put on a somewhat forced smile, The truth of the matter is not that he doesn't want to enter these competitions that Chao Shingo and Raichi were talking to him about, it's just that he doesn't like the attention very much. He wanted to go unnoticed and have a quiet year of studies. He already has enough with everything he lives with at home. They walked a little more, talking about meaningless things before separating. Issei walked a little resigned of not knowing what awaits him today at home, if a kind and loving Kateria or a furious, drunk and violent one. As she was arriving, she could see a large truck outside. She was a little scared, as this could be an indication that the brunette would have a lot of fun today. She stopped in front of the front door before taking a breath and releasing it heavily. Once he entered, he got a somewhat strange surprise. Kateria was not angry, rather neutral. While she had a few papers in her hands, he approached her timidly, and once Kateria seemed to notice his presence, she put an arm around his shoulder and hugged him. "Hello, Issei. Good that you arrived," said the brunette with a slight smile. Before Issei could say anything, he could see some rather large men moving boxes from one side to the other. "What's going on?" "What happens, Issei, is that we have a little obstacle," said the brunette seriously, watching how suddenly at her side the already known to both Biko appeared with a smile. "A couple more boxes and we'll be ready," said the black-haired man, and then looked at Issei. "Oh, hello Issei, it's good to see you. By the way, before you ask anything, I think you should read this." Biko asked Kateria for the papers, who hesitated a little but ended up giving in and giving the papers to the brunette. She read for a few seconds and her eyes widened in surprise. She looked at Biko, who never stopped smiling. "As you read, I can't force you and get you out of here. I can't just commit your mother to the hospital either, but I still have to give a report, right?" said the black-haired man, and then in a friendly manner put his arms around the shoulders of mother and son. Kateria and Issei looked at each other for a few seconds and then turned their gaze to Biko, who looked back at them and then smiled even more. "From today on I will join your family. Take good care of me, Issei, Kateria."
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown in left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.